Now, I mean, the stuff that's going on with Matthew Stafford, a couple other free agent items, but this tush-push play is the play that has taken over the combine. Everybody seems to be talking about it. I can't believe it's gotten to this point. But ultimately, I don't think the tush-push is getting pushed out of the league. See what I did there? I don't think they're going to be eliminating the play. I think they are presenting it wrong. You know, these teams are complaining about the Eagles. They should just be complaining about the play, right? You shouldn't be able to push somebody, physically push them forward. That's what they should be talking about eliminating from the game. Not the safety aspect, not anything else. They should be complaining that you can't have an advantage with two. And I was watching film today of this play. I said, you know what? Let me watch this play. Let me see what this play really is all about. Because when it happens in real time, sometimes it happens so fast, and it's just like the play happens and then it's over. They line up for it. You know, if you watch the play in the Super Bowl that they ran on the goal line against Kansas City, one of the plays has Dallas Goedert, Kenny Gainwell, and Johnny Wilson. That's three guys. They are all pushing Jalen Hurts forward into the end zone. The guy's like crowd surfing into the end zone. I mean, it's quite ridiculous, really. I'm not hating on the Eagles at all. Keep doing it. Keep doing it until they tell you can't. But that is what these teams should be fighting for, not whatever they're saying it's this, that, or the other. No, it should not be allowed that three guys can physically push another guy towards a goal. You know, on the other side of the thing, you can't use leverage on the defensive side. You can't push off to try to gain the leverage. So on the same capacity, I don't know why the play is allowed, but they've allowed it. And I can't believe how much attention this thing's getting. We're going to talk to Q Myers later on because he is in Indianapolis, and I want to get his thoughts on the buzz down there. You know, this play has been brought up on the competition committee before. This isn't the first year, but it basically got pushed to the side. You know, the Eagles have run this play since 2002, 108 times. The team that has attempted a tush-push or whatever you want to call it, the second most times in the NFL, it is 55. 55 times the Buffalo Bills have run the play. So the Eagles are really the only team that seems to be running this play. Why? Because they're one of the few teams that has success with it. So it seems that other teams are complaining about the lack of success that they have and the amount of success that the Eagles have. Now, I don't like that answer as the whole thing of, well, then stop it. And, you know, it's not more so stop this or stop that. Is the play fair? Quite frankly, I personally don't think it is, actually. And that's coming from an Eagles fan. I'm just being objective here. If you told me I was on the competition committee for the NFL and I lived in Des Moines, Iowa, I would watch that play and say, I really don't think that play should be legal. But here we are. So I am very intrigued to see what Q Myers tells us today at 3 o'clock when he joins us, because he is at the Combine and has been talking to everybody about this play, because this play has been the talk of the Combine.
If I could play devil's advocate, Mike, can I ask you, why does it matter that it's not fair?
What do you mean?
You said it's not fair, the tush-push.
I just don't think that you should physically be able to have two players without the ball pushing someone forward.
But why?
Because I don't think you should be. There is no reason why.
Well,
that's my reason.
That's not an answer. That's just
because
you
you needed a physical advantage to push another guy forward. The defense can't do that. I gave that answer already.
Well, the defense can gang pile and stop a guy from moving forward.
But they cannot use another guy for leverage. They can't physically put their hands on their teammate and push off of him to try to gain leverage to stop. Therefore, the offensive player should not be allowed to have someone put their hands on them and physically gain leverage to push him forward.
So you're saying there's a difference between, like, for example, if a guy grabs a guy by the ankles, holds him there till the rest of his teammates get there to tackle him.
Well, he can hold him up. The defensive player's objective is to hold him, tackle him, bring him to the ground. The offensive player, though, if you have a guy who's the ball carrier and you have a guy running 5 yards of steam and just lowers his shoulder and drives you forward, I don't think you should be able to do that.
Well, you can't run up, full throttle and push a guy forward. There's a rule against that. You actually have to.
But this is essentially they're not running from 5 yards out, but they are huddled up within a yard of them, and they are getting some momentum as the pile goes forward. Then they interject.
Right.
Like if you watch the play, Hurts goes forward, and then the 3 guys come and say, okay, here's an extra push.
Right.
You got 3 guys pushing forward. I just think that play should be illegal.
So you're looking at it from the perspective of it's not a natural football play.
The fact that it's a natural football play or not, I don't think that the ball carrier should be aided by a teammate to be able to go forward. His momentum should not be able to go forward based
You mean
on
physically aided.
Yeah, exactly. Like you should not be able to have a teammate physically pushing you forward to gain more yards.
Because, for example, we've seen situations where, like, you might have a running back at the goal line. He doesn't fully get across, and then one of his teammates might come along, and the guy who's tackling him is holding him up, but then his other teammate comes in and tackles the guy tackling him and pulls his teammate into the end zone. We've seen that happen before. Dallas Goedert, for example, a couple of years ago with Miles Sanders.
Yeah, like, somebody just texted in and said, what about a lineman pushing a player with the ball? Right. I don't think that should be allowed. Like there is a rule, by the way, against, and I got to pull it up. They were talking about it this morning on Sportsmanlike.
Unsportsmanlike, yeah.
And they had the graphic up on the screen. It's like Rule 14. I don't know, Candy was talking about it. Actually, I do have it. I have the rule because I was on Birds 365 this morning, and I sent it to them, and they put the graphic up on the screen. So I do have it. Here we go. The rule is called assisting the runner. All right? It is Article 4. So those of you watching on the video on the X platform and on YouTube, here you go. Here is the rule as it is written, okay? I think it's an interesting thing. So there we go. Article 4, assisting the runner and interlocking interference. No offensive player may pull a runner in any direction. So you're not allowed to pull a runner. So you can't be physically in front of him and pull him forward.
Mm-hmm. Although we've seen that happen.
You're not supposed to be able to do that. 2, use interlocking interference by grasping a teammate or by using his hands or arms to encircle the body of a teammate in an effort to block an opponent. That's number 2. So essentially, I guess it's like putting your arms around the guy and like dragging him with you.
Right. You can't like drag him with you as you move forward.
This is the interesting one. And it says, all right, so no offensive player may A, pull a runner in any direction at any time. B, use interlocking interference by grasping a teammate or by using his hands or arms to encircle the body of a teammate in an effort to block an opponent. Or C, push or throw his body against a teammate to aid him in an attempt to obstruct an opponent or to recover a loose ball. So that is where it's a little murky because that essentially is saying you can't push a guy. But then at the end, and it says in an attempt to obstruct an opponent or to recover a loose ball. So it's basically saying, like, you can't push your guy from behind into another guy if he's going after a fumble or something, is the way I'm kind of interpreting that. But this is essentially saying you can't push or throw your body against a teammate to aid him.
To which I asked the question that Evan Cohen asked Chris Canty this morning, which is basically saying, well, if that's the rule, then why don't they enforce it?
I don't know. In fact, I thought that first off, I thought you were not allowed to push a guy forward. That was a rule at one point.
It was a rule in college at one point for sure. Because remember the whole Reggie Bush thing with USC.
Yes, the Bush push.
So that was illegal in college football for many years.
Yes.
But now this rule in the NFL, because I was listening to Canty and Smallman and Evan Cohen this morning, they mentioned like this rule has been in the NFL for a very long time. It's not a new rule.
I just look at the way the play goes and just say, I'm not saying like, so Sirianni yesterday is going on this passionate rant about how they do it so intricately.
How they train and practice
it
numerous times.
And I was with McMullen this morning, and he kind of thinks that Sirianni's being a little facetious.
Well, it's Sirianni.
Yeah.
It's what he does.
But that they do it differently and they do it successfully. And I'm not debating that. And again, I'm not asking for the play to go away. Obviously, it helps the Eagles. I'm just saying, objectively, as a football fan, I think the play really shouldn't be legal. Like, I think the offensive team has too much of an advantage. And then the answer would be, well, other teams aren't doing it as well. I'm not debating that. Other teams aren't doing it as well. They also don't try it nearly as much. So it's such a small sample size to say they're not doing it as well. The Eagles have ran it 108 times. The next team has run it 55 times. Right. So nobody else is really running it enough to say they don't do it as well. Maybe if they ran it 100 times and failed 50 times, then we could really say the Eagles are doing it so much better than everybody else. But nobody else is even trying it for the most part. But I think if you just watch the play, you would maybe agree with me, maybe I'm wrong, that watching three guys get to run from behind you and put their inertia into you to move forward is probably not a play that should be legal.
So then my next question would be, how many of those tush pushes, if they were not involving a push and were just a regular QB sneak, do you think the Eagles would have made?
Well, and that's what McMullen contends, is that the Eagles run the quarterback sneak anyway better than anybody else. They don't really need to do the tush push. It just gains some, this popularity and this notoriety, and they just run it. But he contends, by the way, that the Eagles ran the quarterback sneak with Carson Wentz better than, at a higher percentage than they run the tush push.
Yeah, it was almost automatic with Wentz. What was it, 2016, 2017?
Yeah, that when he used to do the quarterback sneak, he was so good at it that he was I don't say way more successful, but he was more successful at it than the Eagles are at running this tush push.
Right, because what they would do is they would have him basically wedge between, Kelsey at center and then Brandon Brooks, who was a 6'5" monster human being on the right side. And of course, Carson Wentz himself was a 6'5" man, a much taller, longer man than Jalen Hurts is.
All right, 609-403-0973. Huddy in Galloway. This text message was actually at 7:30 this morning, so he must have been watching what I was watching during Unsportsmanlike. He says, this is BS that the NFL is trying to ban the tush push. I thought this was a copycat league. Other teams are just mad because they can't perfect the brotherly shove. Prove to me that people are getting hurt or there is no entertainment value. Well, you can't prove the entertainment value part. That's subjective. The hurt thing, you can prove. I don't know that there's any statistical evidence that people are getting hurt on that play, Huddy.
They talked about that on NFL Network last night on the NFL Insider show, that they were saying that, because Sean McDermott, the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, I must have had another head coach named Sean. Sean McDermott claimed that there were some injury concerns with this, and so did a couple other people, and basically they were saying last night on NFL Network that there's no evidence of there being injury issues.
No, and that's one of the things that McMullen was pointing out to me on his show this morning, is that he thinks teams like the Bills and whoever's against it are presenting it as an injury risk, and he doesn't think that will pass because there's no evidence that people are getting hurt on the play. Now, other teams are mad because they can't perfect the brotherly shove. Huddy, that goes back to what I said. I don't know that they can't perfect it. They're just not really even trying it.
Well, also not everybody has 1,700 pounds of mass on their offensive line. The Eagles have the biggest offensive line in the NFL.
They do, but I also think that you have three players that line up behind the quarterback helping that all move forward.
That helps, but like you said about the whole the quarterback sneak with Carson Wentz, part of it is when you have these massive athletes on the offensive line, your starting point is already ahead of a lot of teams that, frankly, we've asked the question numerous times. Why don't other teams invest in their offensive lines like the Eagles do?
If the defensive player, like let's say the safety started from 5 yards off the ball and then he just ran forward
like
and
Troy
pushed
Polamalu,
the linebacker into, like, the problem is the timing aspect of it.
Right. You got to get the timing right. Like, that's what they got in trouble in the playoff game. You remember?
They were trying to time it and jump over. But, like, that's where I think the offense has too much of an advantage because the defense cannot also push forward because of the fact that they don't know what the snap count is. So you're giving the offense an advantage that they could use multiple players lined up directly behind the quarterback to aid him. It's almost like he's body surfing at times.
Right. Well, I mean, if he's upright, the purpose of the play is supposed to be low man wins. The idea is Hurts is supposed to go low, but sometimes, as you said, if he can't go low, he tries to go high, and now he's just riding on a pile of bodies.
Right, and then he's getting pushed by Goddard and Gainwell and Johnny Wilson. And
whoever else might be in the neighborhood.
I saw one play where A.J. Brown got pushed, and he got actually knocked off the ball. He ended up being pushed into the backfield. Mike, I completely agree with you. You should not be able to physically assist the runner. I remember a touchdown long ago by Keith Jackson that was brought back for that reason.
That's a throwback name.
That is the one that I agree with, that I don't think you should be able to physically assist the runner. Everything else I have no problem with, but then the play isn't the play. I mean, the play is the play because you are physically getting assisted. It is the tush push. The three players are lined up, or it's usually two, but then sometimes there's a third guy that kind of comes in motion.
Right.
And the one in the Super Bowl, Johnny Wilson was in there, as was Goddard and Gainwell.
Yeah.
And they physically take their hands and push the tush of Hurts and way into the end zone. And that extra push was the reason they scored. Now, there are other times that I watch video and Hurts is getting that first down no matter what. He'll follow Landon Dickerson and just nobody even pushes him or aids him or anything. He gets the first down. So I don't know that the Eagles have to have it in this capacity.
No, they don't. And by the way, it was joked by, Saquon Barkley was on Jimmy Fallon's show. And so I get the best part of the tush push. I get to push the tush. The guys who get to do the pushing, it's like a secondary, almost like a joke for the guys.
Mike, what if the teams aren't doing it because they're adhering to the actual rule? Then that's their fault.
Yeah, so if you're not, Chris Long likes to say, if you're not trying to cheat, then you're not trying to win.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Eagles aren't getting penalized for this. So if you're a team that isn't trying it for that reason, then there are teams that have tried it. Like, for instance, the Green Bay Packers ran the play with the tight end.
Right.
They tried to run it in the divisional round. Earlier in the playoffs with
Tyler Kraft, the tight end.
No. They tried to run it in a game, not the divisional round. I think they tried to run it in a regular season game with Jordan Love, and he fell over the guard.
Oh, right.
Right? He fell over the guard. He tripped. Then they ran it against the Eagles with Tunyon, the tight end, and it was successful.
Tyler Kraft.
Kraft, the tight end, and it was successful. The Buffalo Bills are the team that runs it the second most. Well, why? They have the biggest quarterback in the league.
Yeah, they got a 6'5" behemoth.
So they should be running it more, not having their coach complain that they want to get rid of it.
Right, which doesn't make any sense. But then again, I go back to the whole, if the rule says, as you verbalized it, Mike, why is it not being enforced?
I don't know. I'm actually stunned that it's gotten to this point where it has become the talk of the combine. SLR is watching on YouTube. Says, but the offense and defense can push. The offense can push a runner forward, and the defense can push a player backwards when they gang tackle. So what's the difference? Well, not necessarily, because the forward momentum is where they place the ball. They can push them backwards, but the referee is still going to say, where was the forward progress halted? So you might be watching a bunch of guys push somebody backwards, but it's where the forward progress was halted. That's where they spot the ball.
At least we're supposed to spot the ball.
Yeah, but that's where this whole thing gets a little murky, too. Where is the push aiding when the momentum was stopped?
Right, and where is the ball ultimately from the push to the end of the play when the referee finally blows the whistle?
STT Sports Network's watching on YouTube says, stop letting the Eagles get to 3rd and 4th and 1. Listen, that's easier said than done. I mean, we're playing football here. Guys are getting yards. I get it. Yeah, stop doing it. You can't just say the whole game there's no 3rd and 1s and no 4ths and 1s. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
The question should not be stop letting them do this. It should be the legality of the play or the fairness of the play. In fairness, do we think that you should have 3 offensive players aiding the quarterback to move forward?
And if we deem it not fair, then how do we get the officials to call it properly? You know what I mean? Because that's a whole another issue, right? Is this an interpretation issue, or do we strictly say if you're an offensive player, you can't touch the guy carrying the ball?
Yeah, I mean, and listen, I thought that was the way it was for a while, was that, you can't have.
That was the college rule for years. The college rule for years is that if you have a quarterback or a running back running the ball, you can't touch him in any way to aid his advancement.
Yeah, and listen, I've been saying the same thing. On defense, you cannot gain leverage from pushing off of, like Canny was talking about this morning. He said the Cowboys were really good at blocking extra points. He was on that team. And then they put the rule in that they couldn't use leverage to gain.
Right, because guys would catapult over each other or shove the long snapper out of the way and catapult themselves to get to blocking the kick.
Exactly. And Candy said he used to block a lot of kicks. He's like 6'6", and he used to be able to catapult himself, and that would help him to be able to get extra height. And
Right.
now you cannot use leverage
At all
on the defensive side of the ball. So I don't know why you would be able to use leverage on the offensive side of the ball.
Which goes back to a whole other question, which is this just another example of the league trying to help offenses be more offensive? And that's why this is going on.
Yeah, I know this is a big topic at the Combine. I do not think they are going to even vote on this, though.
At all.
I do not think so. I do not think that.
Why is that?
They didn't vote on it the last time.
That's true.
And I don't think they're presenting it the right way. This should not be presented as – I think they're presenting it as we don't like the Eagles.
Safety.
The Eagles are prospering from this, and therefore we don't want this play
Right, well,
anymore.
they sound like a guy who's complaining, oh, boo-hoo, I keep losing to the same guy in the race. And it's like, well, what do you want me to do about it?
Yeah, I think like it's being presented wrong. If you presented it, no, and the safety thing I think is a problem too, right? If you're presenting it as the safety of the game is the issue, there's no evidence to suggest that that is correct.
Correct. So, again, it goes back to if you're not going to present it properly, then how are you going to get it made illegal?
Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. We're just getting started. Busy day. Mike McGarry's here. Q Myers is here. MKB is in the house. A lot of text messages. Mike, I hate the tush push. It cost Barkley 8 to 10 touchdowns and possible TD in the Super Bowl. That's from Jeff and Galloway. You right. Yeah. What's that?
That's a fantasy football owner right there.
Maybe he's just more of a Barkley fan. Who knows? But, yeah, probably the fantasy football thing there. All right, coming up, Mike McGarry. Does he think the tush push should stay or go? We'll get his thoughts on that. What should the Sixers do with Joel Embiid? Can they trade Joel Embiid? Also, later on tonight, Knicks Nuggets, Rye or Sigh. We hope you hang around for the whole show today. It's a Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. All right, 2:32. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com, joins us now. A lot going on. The combine's happening. The Eagles and the tush push seem to be the big story down there. We talked a little bit about it the other day, Mike, but this thing just seemingly won't go away. Now, I think it's an unfair advantage for the offensive players. However, I don't think the league will vote on it because I think they're presenting it wrong. They're talking about it like it's an injury risk, although I don't think there's any evidence that there's been any injuries from the actual play. But taking three players and pushing the quarterback forward, I think that is what they should be highlighting, right? If you want to try to get rid of the play, you should be talking about an unfair advantage gained by the offense because they can use leverage that the defense cannot.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the injury factor. We really haven't seen a player injured during the actual play, right? But you're right. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, you couldn't push players from behind. In fact, you remember that Notre Dame USC game, the famous Bush push where USC came back from behind and beat Notre Dame with Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush pushing the USC player over the goal line, a play that was illegal but didn't get called at the time. If you want to eliminate the tush push, just go back to the old rule saying you can't come up from behind and push a runner forward. It's simple as that to me.
You look at that play. The Eagles have run it 108 times since 2022. The next team has run it 55 times, Buffalo. And everybody seems to be mad about this. They're like, well, not everybody can do it. Not everybody tries to do it. Are you surprised or that this thing is manifested so much that Philadelphia is almost defined by this play and nobody else tries it?
Well, yes and no. I think you've got to have the quarterback to do it. I mean, the two quarterbacks who do it the most, as you pointed out, first of all, is Jalen Hurts, a guy who's famous for his leg strength, right? Squats more than 600 pounds. You really got to have that strong base to get low and drive forward. And Josh Allen of Buffalo, another big quarterback, big physically strong quarterback. So everybody doesn't have the quarterback to go do it. Like the Chiefs aren't going to do it with Mahomes, So, I don't see Cincinnati doing it with Burrow. You really need that big, strong, physical guy at quarterback in order to pull it off, and not every team has that. The Eagles do. I think it's a tremendous advantage for the Eagles when it's 3rd and 5 for them. They've almost got an automatic 2 downs to pick up a first down because if it's 4th and 2 or less, they're almost assured of going to the tush push and getting the first down. So I see where it's a big advantage for the Eagles, and I can also see where some in the league are trying to stop it. The NFL has had a history of doing this before. Remember back, when the Colts were playing the Patriots and the Patriots beat the hell out of the Colts wide receivers with Peyton Manning. And then the next year there were all sorts of rules about how you couldn't hit receivers downfield and stuff like that. So the NFL does react to teams kind of gaining a competitive advantage, even though it's clearly not fair to the Eagles if they outlaw the play, just like it wasn't fair to the Patriots 15 years ago when they changed the way how defensive backs could cover wide receivers.
Mike, yesterday ESPN's Jeremy Fowler suggested that the Eagles will be the most aggressive team in the trade market, and he said that in talking about Myles Garrett, and he suggested that if Washington were to make an offer, that Roseman would come over the top and make sure that his offer was better. If you're Howie Roseman and Philadelphia, are you all in on trying to get Myles Garrett, even if it means you're giving up some draft capital and it might affect, 4 or 5 years down the road and that you might have to give up a younger player? But are you all in on a Myles Garrett, or do you just stick with what you got and keep letting it grow together?
No, I stick with what I got and I keep letting it grow together. I'm not sure the Eagles need Myles Garrett, but they do need some draft choices and stuff like that. And that's the secret to long-term success, right, is to draft the way they drafted this draft, right, and getting, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell and getting guys through the draft. So I'm not giving up any picks or any of my young players in order to get a veteran in Myles Garrett. I don't think they need him to put them over the top with the way the defense plays. I think what the Eagles need is more draft picks to kind of sustain this going forward. And I saw a stat the other day that the average age of the Eagles is 26 and a half. That's my favorite stat for the Eagles. I want to keep that or get younger. I want to add younger, talented players. That's the key to sustaining success. I'm not interested in bringing in, a superstar. Who knows how many years he has left, as dominating as he has been. I really just don't think the Eagles need him.
A little surprised by that, Michael. I think I'd make the move, man. I think Roseman needs to go all Dodgers on us, win a World Series, and then go out and get the two best pitchers on the free agent market and hear everybody complain that the Dodgers spent all the money. Philly, win a Super Bowl, and then go get a guy who had 14 sacks and say, figure out how to block us now.
Yeah, I think as attractive as that looks, as I can see the logic behind that, and I'm very interested this year to see how the Dodgers unfold. People think the Dodgers are going to win 120 games. History says that doesn't often work, that things don't unfold the way the way they seem to be. If I'm the Eagles, they've been successful. Yeah, they've added some free agents along the way. Obviously, Saquon Barkley, and the argument that you're making is, could Myles Garrett come in and do for the Eagles defense what Saquon Barkley did for the Eagles offense? That's pretty compelling. But again, I don't want to give up the draft choices. I like building the young core, building on the young core that they have. And I'm definitely not giving up any of my younger players that I have to put them in a trade for Myles Garrett.
Yeah, I know some people have tossed out, like, would you trade Nolan Smith, like a first round, number 32, and Nolan Smith, or, 32, maybe next year's first round pick, and then like a lesser player, maybe Jordan Davis or Jalix Hunt. I don't know. There's a lot out there that Howie Roseman has to think about right now. But he kind of said yesterday, we're going to look different, and it might be unconventional. And I'm wondering if that's some tea leaves saying, hey, we might let the tackle and the edge guy go, and we might bring back the linebacker, something that we might not have done in years past.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they progress here and what they kind of do. Of course, they're going to look different. There's natural change, especially in the NFL. Of all sports, you don't have the guaranteed contracts. It's easy to kind of move on from guys. There's a 53-man roster, right? So you're going to have a different roster out there. I would just be very careful about straying from what has made them successful, basically. And that has been smart drafting and adding timely free agents. And I don't, call me superstitious, but I think the Dodgers might have gotten a little greedy in this offseason, and the baseball gods might have something to say about that in July or August.
Let's hope.
So how about the Eagles not anger the football gods, and we hear the football gods rattling their sabers in October or November? So I'd just be very careful about how they sort of approach things and how they sort of blend together the draft and free agents.
Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com, joining me here on a Sports Bash Wednesday. As we always do, we go around and get Mike's thoughts on everything. Monday, we talked about the Phillies lineup that never happened because of the rain. Today, back to Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper. They're sticking with those three at the top. Castellanos not playing today. So Bohm is 4, Bryce is top 5. But 1, 2, 3, Turner, Schwarber, Harper. Mike, are we starting to see the tea leaves that might be what it is?
Yeah, I mean, it could be. And again, when we talked about on Monday, we said, that was one that nobody really kind of mentioned, mostly because we always thought the Phillies would want to break up the left-handed hitters. But if you're bringing in a lefty reliever to face Kyle Schwarber in the 2-hole, that pitcher's got to stay in for 3 batters. So he faces Schwarber, he faces Harper, and then you have the righty and Bohm coming behind him. You have Bryce Harper, a guy who has said down in Florida that he doesn't want to hit leadoff. He prefers to see a lot of pitches in the first inning. That says to me, although he said he didn't mind hitting second, he wants to stay in the 3-hole. And you can't let Kyle Schwarber hit any lower than 4th, because then you take away from his production and the number of at-bats he gets over the course of the season. And you put Trey Turner at the top. And again, Trey Turner's the guy. He is in the crosshairs this year. He's going to be the guy we're looking at in March and April and May, and to see are we finally going to get the guy we thought when we signed him for $300 million 2 years ago. Is he going to run more with Schwarber up there? Is he going to get on base more? But I like that order. I like the idea of Turner, Schwarber, Harper, followed by Bohm. I think that's a pretty good lineup. I think that's a tough 4 guys to go through to start a game.
Well, Mike, we talk about it a lot. The lineup is what it is. I still feel that in the end, there's that right-handed guy in the middle of the lineup to protect Harper. They're just missing.
Yeah, I mean, can Bohm do that? Can Bohm be that guy? Can Castellanos take another step forward this season, be more consistent? I mean, Mike, this is a good baseball team with the Phillies. I know they added Jordan Romano, they added Kepler. They didn't go out and get Juan Soto. They didn't have the big free agent signings the way they have the past couple of years. But you go around the diamond and you look at it, and this is a ball club that won 94, 95 games. Dave Dombrowski is exactly right. If they had figured out the number 5 starter towards the end of last season, they probably would have won 100 games. This is a team that's won 100 games, should have won 100 games last year if they're healthy. Now, what they need is they need some guys to have some better years. They need Brandon Marsh to have a better year, and another key guy for them is they need Bryson Stott to step forward and be the guy we thought he was going to be last year. I know he had the elbow injury, but he didn't really hit the ball with any juice or power. They need a Bryson Stott to hit about 280, 290, hit 20 to 25 home runs and steal 30 bases. I think he's capable of putting up those numbers. So the Phillies can improve, but that improvement's got to come from within this year. And look, they're a very, very good baseball team.
Mike McGarry, last time we talked, the Sixers were getting ready to play the Bulls. They were down 50 at one point in that game. I remember 2015-16, that season, they lost by 50-plus to the Spurs, and that's when Colangelo came in and Henke ended up resigning. Changes happened. Should changes be happening after what we saw Monday night?
Yeah, changes should be happening. I've said it before the last couple of times on this show, and Monday night only reinforced it. The losses that they've had since they've come back from the All-Star break, right? Boston, the loss to the Nets, and the game against the Bulls, especially the game against the Bulls, inexcusable. I mean, Mike, they still had Paul George and Tyrese Maxey over here. We're talking about Tyrese Maxey, and I think he's been disappointment this year. Tyrese Maxey's on the floor with Paul George, and they're still down 50 to the Chicago Bulls. This is a team that is losing games that gets people fired. Now, is that the coach? Is that the general manager? Is it both? But the Sixers have huge problems going forward, and I think they have to get this Embiid thing settled. And then I think, too, they might need a new point of view, a new guy to come in here and say, okay, how do we put this thing back on track? Because currently it is off the rails. I mean, this is embarrassing the way they are playing. You cannot be down 50 to a Chicago Bulls team. And Mike, Jordan wasn't wearing the Bulls unit. 23 wasn't out there. There was no Scottie Pippen, no Rodman, no Steve Kerr, no Phil Jackson on the bench. That was a banged up Bulls team without Vucevic, without Zach LaVine. You couldn't even name 5 Chicago Bulls out there that played in that game. And they're down 50 and down 20 in the first quarter. Those performances are inexcusable, and something has got to change. And when a team plays like this, somebody gets fired, and those changes are going to come to the Sixers.
We leave you with this, Mike. There has been, discussion about Embiid and what could happen here. Marcus Hayes had a report that it could be a elongated, bizarre type of surgery there. But the Sixers the other night, Nick Nurse did not rule him out of coming back this season. Do we see Embiid again this year?
I can't imagine under any circumstances he comes back this season, Mike. I mean, I think Nick Nurse is not going to say it, but how do you put him out there? Look, to me, again, I watch Embiid play, and I just, I feel bad for the guy. I feel sad watching him play. Here is a guy who was an MVP, who scored 70 points in a game last year, who was one of the most talented big men I've ever seen play the game from an offensive standpoint. And now he's out there, and he looks lifeless. His body language is terrible. He can barely run up and down the court. He's falling all over the place. It's sad to see him play under these conditions. It's not doing him any good. It's not doing the 76ers any good. And let's face facts, they might be better without him. And that's saying a lot for a team that was down 50 to the Chicago Bulls on Monday night. So to me, the Embiid thing, I just kind of get sad when I look at it. I wonder what is up with his career, and I wonder if we are seeing a premature end to his career like we saw with other big men like Yao Ming, like Bill Walton, like Greg Oden. Is Embiid going to go down as one of those guys that we sit there 10 years from now and say what might have been? And I hope that's not the case, but that is the path we're on now. They've got to get him healthy and get this figured out, and there's no way to put him, in my opinion, back on the floor this season is malpractice.
The Sixers take on the Knicks tonight on 97.3 ESPN. Knicks are a 9.5-point favorite. I like that play. I think I go Knicks there, over under 230, and you can listen to that game at 7 o'clock right here on 97.3 ESPN. Mike McGarry, everybody. Follow him at AC Press McGarry on the X platform. Thanks, Mike.
All right, Mike, we'll see you down the road. Thanks.
Mike's back with a weekend preview coming up on Friday here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. And, of course, you can download the app in the Apple Store, Google Play, and you can message us through the app on your phone. It's free, thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City. Just hit the Message Us button. Get us your thoughts on the Sixers, the Phillies, the Flyers, who won last night again. I'll give you an update on the standings there. That's coming up on the Sports Bash. I got some text messages coming in, 609-403-0973. They're next. Stick around. More Sports Bash on the way. All right, let me get a couple text messages in. 609-403-0973 if you want a text message. 609-403-0973. Rich in Atlantic City. Sign and trade Sweat in our first rounder to get Garrett. Do you think that gets it done? A sign and trade for Sweat and pick 32 for Myles Garrett.
It's very difficult to do sign and trades with the NFL CBA. It's very different than the NBA.
Yeah, you don't see that a lot. You can do them. It's not like it's illegal. It's just hard. But
it's very hard.
That one might work out, actually. I don't know what Sweat. Do the Browns want to pay Sweat that kind of money would be the question.
I mean, Sweat is younger than Garrett, so maybe.
Not much. They're about the same.
He's about 2 years younger, I thought.
It's Josh Sweat. I mean, I know
Garrett's turning 30, so.
Josh Sweat is, he's 27. He's younger than I thought, actually. I thought Sweat was getting closer to 30. I was wrong about that. Maybe Cleveland is, but are they willing to pay Sweat what they're paying Garrett?
Or something comparable.
Well, I'm saying in that range.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what we're about to find out what Sweat's value is. Now, Adam Schefter said earlier today on the Pat McAfee show, he said this.
It's a hard deal to get done because you're talking about a guy that led the NFL in sacks this year. And you're looking at an offseason in which T.J. Watt is going to have his deal adjusted. There's a few defensive ends. Myles Garrett, Micah is another one. Josh Sweat's going to kill it in free agency.
Yep.
So Trey Hendrickson, what is his production worth when he has gotten more sacks than guys who have gotten big deals in recent years?
Obviously, the key of that was he said Josh Sweat is going to kill it in free agency. So Sweat might not want to sign to be traded to go to the Browns. He wants to probably pick where he wants to go. So a sign and trade is very difficult.
Right. Why would he want to do the Eagles a favor?
Yeah. Why is he signing potentially for less to go to Cleveland of all places? So that's a good idea, but I don't think Josh Sweat wants to sign to help you out to go to Cleveland. That would be my take. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Coming up, Q Myers from the Combine, all the latest big NFL stories. Could Matthew Stafford be in the NFC East? Stick around.
Here's Mike Gill.
3 o'clock hour, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. The NFL Combine is going on in Indianapolis, which I thought was on Central Time, but apparently it is 3 o'clock there as well for my guest Q Myers. Joe and Q, weekdays on 97.3 ESPN. You heard him a little while ago talking a lot about what we want to get into right now. A lot of NFL stuff happening. You are in the heart of the NFL stories. And one of the biggest stories, my friend, seems to be the Tush push. I can't believe this seems to be the story of you're in Indianapolis. I mean, is this the story out there? Everybody talking about the Tush push?
I mean, it's one of the big storylines. Matt Stafford and him, where he's going to end up playing in 2025 is another big conversation. But, yeah, the Tush push, as the Green Bay Packers, apparently the only team that has decided that they want to, they want to get that play banned is they made a big deal about it. It's ridiculous. It's a conversation. And, the funny thing is a lot of people, here in Indy are talking about how it is absolutely that. Ridiculous that they're even proposing that they get rid of it. So it's funny that it's a lot of conversation, but it's not a lot of conversation. Yeah, got to get rid of that play. Got to get rid of that play. No, just you got to try to find a way to stop it. If you can't stop it, then so be it. I said it like this earlier on the show. If it was the Raiders that were pulling off the Tush push really well and consistently, nobody would be talking about them. Nobody would probably even know that they have a play called the Tush push. But since Philadelphia does it, they do it better than anyone else. They're winning, and they just won the Lombardi with it. That's why it's a big deal for Green Bay.
Well, I want to get your opinion because you just said the Raiders, if they do it or somebody else. The Eagles have run the play 108 times since 2022. The Bills run it the second most. They've only run it 55 times. That's a 50-play disparity between the two teams. Why do we think no one else does it?
I think that the way that the Eagles have mastered it, the way that they have really worked on it, they have the personnel to be able to pull it off consistently, especially their quarterback, Jalen Hurts. Obviously, the offensive line knows what it takes to be able to go and get it done. But that quarterback, man, and what he's able to squat and the fact that he's able to execute it the way he does is just different, man. So when they mastered it, and they ran with it. It's so funny. I remember when, and I know it's not the same type of play, but remember when the Wildcat first became a thing, when the Dolphins were doing it all the time, and then others tried to emulate it, and Miami seemed like that they were just masters of it, and everyone else tried to do it. Then everyone put it into their game plan, and some were good, some weren't, and then finally it went away, and we see it every once in a while. And I know it's not the same play, but it's just something like it, man. It's they mastered it, and then when they mastered it and everyone said, oh, man, we really like what they're doing, then at this point they try to emulate it, and they just can't do it at the same level. And again, you can look at it and say that some quarterbacks don't want to get injured or want to risk injury. And we've seen a couple guys get a little banged up here and there with it. So there's different elements to why in Dallas they, got away with the, where the defensive line was able to push guys to try to block an extra kick or extra point or a field goal, whatever. And the league finally got away from that because it was an advantage. And he was actually the guy that was getting pushed all the time in the back and putting him in a better position to be able to block a kick. And so that he said he understands it's not pleasing to the eyes, and he doesn't think that the the way that you view it on TV is very good. So that's why he thinks they should get rid of it.
All right, Q Myers is with us here from Joe and Q on 97.3 ESPN. You are at the Combine here. You just mentioned, could we see Matthew Stafford in the NFC East? Is that gaining steam, or somewhere else? I think Tom Brady is making a pitch towards possibly saying going from LA to Vegas.
It sounds like it, and that's been the hot topic here at the Combine ever since I've been here. And I got here Sunday night, but really got popping on Monday and Tuesday, where his name is really hot and heavy on a lot of people's minds, and talking about where he's going to end up. Could it be with the Giants? Could it be in Cleveland? Could it be in Pittsburgh? Could it end up with the Raiders? And the reports are out there. And I work with Vinny Bonsignore, who said that the Brady and has talked to the Rams camp, let's just put it like that, about Matt Stafford, or Matt's camp about potentially ending up in Vegas, and I think until that domino drops, man, I mean, I think it's a real thing. Where I really didn't believe it was, I thought it was more posturing. It feels like it's more real than we thought when it all started.
Are you surprised, Q, that it's gotten to this point for Stafford? I mean, when your options are the Raiders, the Giants. I mean, these don't sound like attractive options when I was a play away from beating the Philadelphia Eagles on the road in their building in the snow.
Yeah, I really do. I'm really surprised by that, Mike. That's my biggest thing. I think the Stafford and the Rams are together are better with each other, right? I mean, like you said, they had a lot of success, but apparently Matt wants his value, and they don't see the value that the Rams are trying to give him or whatever like that. So that's to me, again, it kind of blew my mind. I still think that when it's all said and done, the Rams are going to end up with him in 2025. But this is feeling about as real as it can get, especially when all of a sudden you get Tom Brady involved and you get other organizations involved. That's when it really becomes real to me.
All right, so circle around here and say, right, Stafford, L.A., where could he end up? His wife wants to be, in a podcast. She got the podcast too, so she wants to be in a spot where that's going to get a lot of clicks and views. What about Aaron Rodgers and his future? Does the L.A. thing open up? Does he go to the Giants? Would the Raiders have interest there? Because everybody's wondering, where's the puzzle piece for Mr. Rodgers' neighborhood?
That's it right there. It's L.A. I think that, maybe there's a Aaron Rodgers and a Devontae Adams sighting in L.A. if Stafford's not there, right? I mean, it feels like that's a 1-2 punch, and we know that the Rams are a really good team. Aaron Rodgers is a really good quarterback, so all of a sudden he's looking for a team that he can help put over the top and also come with a weapon like Devontae Adams. We know Cooper Kupp's not going to be in L.A. in 2025, so those two could go as a 1-2 punch and trying to get them over the top. I could see that if, in fact, Matt Stafford's not there. But, again, I mean, the gut feeling tells me, especially with the family, and I guess that's why Vegas makes sense, because the family wouldn't be that far away. I mean, they could stay there in L.A. It's a quick flight from L.A. to Vegas, 35 minutes. You could be touching down in town, so it doesn't take that long to get there. So with all that's why it would make more sense.
All right, we're talking about the key NFL stories at the Combine with Q Myers. Of course, you just heard him on Joe and Q, and he is at the Combine, so he's kind of getting all these you get the late night talks on this, or are these just what's going on in the radio row out here? You getting those little late night
radio row, late night talks, everything, everything.
Jotting down. Hey, Zach
everything.
Berman's behind you there. There you go. All the Eagle guys are butting behind you. But speaking of the Eagles, I just saw Zach Berman because he was tweeting a lot of this out. Myles Garrett. Is that some scuttlebutt out there? Yeah. Yesterday, Andrew Berry says we can't imagine him not being here. But do we think Howie Roseman would be that aggressive and make that kind of move? Ooh. Or what about your guy, Max Crosby? Is he interested in maybe packing his bag? So talk about those two edge rushers.
No, Max isn't going anywhere. I don't believe so. I think the Raiders, Pete Carroll and John Spytek know what a valuable edge rusher brings to the table, right? Just saw what Philadelphia was able to do. You don't let that guy get out of town. They're going to put some extra money on Max's contract. He'll be fine. They'll take care of him one way. They do have to sell him on how they're going to win, though. They do have to do that. That's part of the process as well. So we'll see how that takes place. But they're not going to up and trade him. Myles Garrett, I think that Andrew Berry, even though he said that they're not interested in trading him, I think that they're trying to up the ante. I think that they're trying to have some of those late night conversations with folks and potentially, get something really nice thrown their way. But I mean, it's Myles Garrett, man. I mean, that dude's a phenomenal player. So I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be surprised if they find a way to keep him and hold on to him and sell him on how they're going to bounce back and have a winning team.
Man, 3-14, that's a tough sell, man. Especially, he says, I am determined to find my way to a Super Bowl contender. Well, what better way than to forget a contender? How about the Super Bowl champions? Because we all know, Q, Howie Roseman would be the kind of guy who would be willing and is creative enough to make that kind of move.
As he should. And especially when you're hoisting and holding on to the current Lombardi trophy, why not? Right? I mean, you have wiggle room. You have the right to be able to go make that move and say, trust me, I know what I'm doing, because everything that he's been doing as of late, all those plays, all those plans that he's made, all the different decisions he's made, all the guys he's drafted, whether they're coming off a torn ACL, have a little bit of off the field issues, has worked out really well for them. So he's built up the say-so to say that I know what I'm doing. Trust me, we're going to make it work. And similar to when the Rams were saying F those picks and get rid of them and bring all their players in because they had a massive plan, Howie Roseman's built up that as well, so he can do the same thing.
All right, let's shift some gears. We got a couple more minutes left with Q Myers here. He's at the NFL Combine, but what's going on with Joel Embiid? Have we seen the end of Embiid in Philadelphia, or potentially for just this season? That contract almost seems untradeable. I heard Joe yesterday saying, get the surgery, take your shirt off. I don't know that works, man.
I don't think so either, man. 4 years from now, he's going to be making $69 million in a year. And I don't even know if he's going to be playing in 4 years. Like his body, how does his body make it 4 years? That's the worst contract in sports history, it feels like. And it's, it's because it's so massive. And what are you getting from him? I hate that for Philadelphia because I know they're passionate about their 76ers, but it seems like Daryl Morey's made bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. The only reason that Paul George isn't getting ripped daily is because Joel Embiid is so bad, right? The contract is so bad and the situation is so bad with him. He's masking everything that Paul George is too, which is a problem. That contract that they gave him was a problem. His lack of providing anything is a problem. I mean, they've got a lot of bad stuff that they've got to try to clear. And how do you clear it? What team with half a mind is going to pick up that contract from Joel Embiid? I don't care what he does at the YMCA against a milk carton. It don't matter. You can take your shirt off all you want. It doesn't matter, man. He's broken down. I hate that for him. He's a great player, but he's not that guy.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that contract, it's up there with the Deshaun Watson contract of the worst in all of sports right now. And it's a shame because Embiid was actually an MVP-level player when he got the deal. He has just not been available for the team. They were down by 50 on Monday night to the Bulls, Q. 50
They're not interested.
to the Bulls.
They're not interested in winning, man. They shouldn't be interested. Shut everybody down. The pick is top 6 protected. So
That's
make sure you have that. And just shut everybody down and try to reset in the offseason to figure out what you're doing. Because right now what you're doing ain't right.
All right.
Tyrese Maxey is the right spot. I love Tyrese Maxey.
Yeah, everybody likes Tyrese Maxey, but he was on the floor when they were down 50 the other night with Paul George. Well, I said, you got two max players on the floor, and you're losing to the Bulls by 50.
Right.
Something's not right in there. And that leads us to the last thing here, Daryl Morey. I mean, a 50-point – they lost by – they went on a 24-6 run to lose by 32 in that game. But is that the kind of game that gets people fired?
Yeah, he should definitely be fired. He's tried to do everything he can to save his job, but there's no doubt he should be fired. I mean, the decisions he's made, Paul George extending Joel Embiid, those are fireable offenses. They should be fireable offenses. Daryl Morey has done nothing to hang his hat on to say, oh, yeah, I'm the guy that's going to build this thing up. He hasn't done that. Get rid of him. He needs to get out of there.
He's got to get out of here, too. Q Myers, of course, you can listen to him right here, noon to 2 on 97.3 ESPN. Joe and Q. He's Q. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Thanks, buddy.
Appreciate you, Mike.
As always, and Q Myers will be back with us here on the Sports Bash. He's at the Combine. Those are the top NFL stories. So let's go back over some of them real quick. One, we know the tush-push thing. I don't think it's going to get on the table. I don't think they're even going to vote on it. I think it'll stay. Two, the Matthew Stafford stuff. I can't believe Matthew Stafford in his right mind would want to say, I want to go play for the Giants and or the Raiders. I'm in the Rams situation that is really good. He is due a lot of money this year. I mean, $50 million, correct?
Well, it's up to $50 million. So it's currently a guarantee. So the guaranteed money is less than that, which is why he is a tradable contract, because the actual cash is different than the full cap hit. The cash is closer to $30 million. So he is a tradable contract.
He's set to earn $27 million this year.
Of guaranteed money, right?
Yes, which is obviously below that of other starting quarterbacks. So I guess
there's a lot of incentives built into the contract, and you know how it works, Mike. When there's no guaranteed money, guys are like, "Well, I want my money."
I get it. I'm sure they can work out a number. Does he really want to leave to go somewhere else so he can make a little bit more? Now I know he's in LA and the taxes out there are different,
right?
But you want to go to New York and play for the Giants? I mean, he's at the end of the line here. He's in his late 30s. Go for another Super Bowl, man.
Also, you're in basically a dome. You're in a good home environment. You're getting older. I mean, my goodness, if I listen to his wife complain one more time about him and his injury history, it's going to make me want to just give up on life. I mean, the woman constantly complains about her husband getting injured. Why would you want to leave a situation
to go to the Giants?
Stafford
has 2 years left on his contract he agreed to in 2022. He has $4 million guaranteed this year, none in 2026. He is set to earn $27 million this season, which is below many starting quarterbacks in the league. And yes, he does, by those accounts, deserve to get more money.
Now, though, I remember the one rumor that was put out there before, Mike, is the idea of a swap of Stafford for Tua. The idea of that would be the only real value a team like the Rams could get in return. But I mean, is that even really a fair deal for anybody involved?
If you're just looking monetarily, if you're just trying to, Tua's a younger player.
Much younger.
And that kind of offense, McVay, McDaniel, they both run a similar style
Correct.
of offense. So it would fit both guys going to where they're going. So if you're just saying, hey, we want to get a younger signal caller if you're the Rams, because then what's the Rams' move? If they trade Matthew Stafford, this is a team that was one play away, essentially, from going to the NFC Championship game, and you're going to then move your quarterback to do what?
Well, that's where the weird rumor about Aaron Rodgers comes in. For those who didn't see it, Pat Leonard of the New York Daily News was reporting that the idea is that Rodgers wants to go to the Rams and bring Devontae Adams with him. And that's part of the reason why the Rams can maybe trade Cooper Kupp. And I'm looking around thinking, is Aaron Rodgers even close to being as good as Stafford at this point? I don't think so.
No, I don't think he's close to being as good as Stafford, but it goes back to, again, what we said with the Jets the year before. If he could just be average. Now, the Jets were just a dumpster fire. Was it because Rodgers was bad, or was there other circumstances?
He had some bad games last year. There were about 3 games off the top of my head I could think of where he was bad, Mike. Matthew Stafford had a very good year last year, and you could argue that.
But you could make the argument, though, that the Rams have better talent around.
They have
than
much
the
better
Jets do.
talent.
Yes.
Yes, but what I'm saying is, to me, when you have a drop-off at the position of the guy who's distributing the ball to that talent, that has to be in the conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't. But I watching Rodgers, I don't think he was dog bleep. Like, I don't think he was that
I'm not
bad.
saying that.
Like, I don't think you're saying like this guy's an unplayable guy.
I just don't understand the value for the Rams to make that decision. You know what I mean? Like, what?
Oh no, I'm not trading Stafford to make way for Rodgers. But I can't believe it's gotten to this point where the Rams are like, okay, they've essentially done what the Giants did to Saquon without him being afraid. They said, go see what your value is. Go find if you can find a trade.
By the way, how about that? Can I ask you about that really quick, Mike? Because I listened to Andrew Brandt talk about this morning. He was talking about how weird it is that Matthew Stafford, Washington with Jonathan Allen, now the Tennessee Titans with Harold Landry. They're saying, yeah, go out and see if you can get more money. Like, how weird is that?
I think these teams have realized, obviously it didn't work for the Giants, but at some point you move on from these guys and you find someone else to replace them. You're the Tennessee Titans. You're going nowhere fast. You want to go make more money? See if you can. We'll find someone else. I mean, that's the mindset of many of these teams now.
But again, these guys are under contract. Saquon was a free agent. That's what's crazy. That you're literally going to guys who are on the books for you in your building saying, hey, if you don't want to hang out, it's like, hey, honey, I know we've been married for 10 years, but you want to go find another situation, I'll give you 90 days.
Sports Bash this hour is brought to you by Broadleaf's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating, plumbing service, and installation for generations. Call 609-390-3907, online, broadleafs.net. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Coming up, have we seen the end of Joel Embiid, at least for this season? And then what about his future? We'll get the latest from 97.3 ESPN.com Sixers insider Michael Kaskey-Blomain, who says Embiid has, quote, probably played his last game of the season and that there's a good chance he will be shut down for the remainder of the year. But what's the future hold for Embiid? That's next. This is the Sports Bash.
Taxes was not knowing your full financial picture. Now Taxes is getting and maximizing your refund all in one place. Credit Karma. where a TurboTax expert can do your taxes for you. They'll get you the most money back, guaranteed. Then you can do more with all that money, all in Credit Karma. Now this is taxes. Intuit Credit Karma with TurboTax. Get started today. See guaranteed details at turbotax.com/guarantees. Experts only available with TurboTax Live.
ZipRecruiter is the place. ZipRecruiter is the place for talented teachers, savvy software developers, and master mixologists. ZipRecruiter is the place where you meet all these people and more. That's because ZipRecruiter is the place for job seekers who are looking for new opportunities. In fact, ZipRecruiter helps 10 million people with their job search every day, so you can find the right candidates right away. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ziprecruiter.com/free. That's ziprecruiter.com/free.
Hey, it's Mike Gill. As football winds down, college basketball is gearing up. Fans are ready to see which teams will prove they are ready to shine in March and who will be seen in San Antonio. You can get in on all the action from tip-off to the final whistle at ESPN Bet Sportsbook. Right now, new ESPN Bet Sportsbook customers can bet $10 to get $100 in bonus bets and unlock 30 days of ESPN Plus. Download the app and sign up with promo code RADIO100 to get started today. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
Since 1949, local homeowners and businesses have trusted Jenkins Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Jenkins understands these are challenging times, which is why they're offering financing on all plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and maintenance services. Take advantage of utility loans up to $25,000 at 0% for 7 years and rebates up to $2,950. If you're a new or existing customer in need of service, call Jenkins today. Some qualifications apply. Call 609-641-6262 or visit jenkinsandsons.com.
That's Tim Bontemps from ESPN. What the latest is on Embiid, where this could be going. Could it be the end of the road, at least for this season, maybe even further? Let's bring in MKB, Michael Kaskey-Blomain from 97.3 ESPN.com. And he is back with us now, not to talk about this wretched season, but what could be next, Michael, for Joel Embiid is obviously he is not himself. This is not the same Joel Embiid that you have covered and have seen. Have we seen the end of Embiid for this season?
Yeah, I think so, Mike. I think it would be, frankly, malpractice to put him back out on the floor for the rest of this season, given, where the team is in the standings and the outlook moving forward. Like you just said, he's clearly a shell of himself. That knee is clearly bothering him and limiting him. The fact that he hasn't been shut down yet, to me, is really surprising and somewhat confusing. But given the recent reporting and what I've been able to gain from talking to some people around the league and Sixers sources, it certainly seems like they're trending in the direction of shutting him down for the rest of the season, and then seeing the best course of action for him to keep him, potentially, hopefully get him healthy moving forward, since he still has 4 years left on that current contract.
So what do we know about where this injury is? It seems bizarre. Is there any clarity on what the problem is, why it has been such an issue for him? Because he has played. He obviously hasn't been himself. We've seen Embiid, like, he played in the playoffs last year and was a much better version of himself than the guy we have seen this year. So what do we know about what might be next for him?
I think that's what's so confusing, because from all reports and all indications were that this was a pretty standard procedure that he had last year on that meniscus. Obviously came back in a pretty quick manner to play in that series against the Knicks, spent a large chunk of the summer, obviously playing with Team USA in the Paris Olympics and getting the gold medal. And then I think heading into this season, the Sixers were thinking that, a little bit of extended rest and, potential things like that would get him good. The fact that it's, not only hasn't the issue gotten better, it seems like it's gotten worse. Like, his availability has gone down. His mobility appears worse than it was definitely last year in that playoff series against the Knicks, and even earlier in the season, what he looked like compared to what he's looked like the past couple times out on the floor. So there's, obviously something never got properly healed or fixed with that meniscus surgery. And now I think they're just looking at potential ways to hopefully avoid this moving forward. Obviously, no one wants this to be the end of the Joel Embiid era in Philadelphia. But right now, there's just more questions than the team has answers regarding that knee and what's gone wrong with it.
This season got off to a rocky start for him, Michael. He was, not ready to start the season. That seemingly was a surprise. Do we think that the relationship between Embiid and the organization has shifted or changed?
I don't think so, Mike. I haven't really gotten that indication. If anything, I think a lot of it is the organization trying to do right by Joel, who always wants to be out there and available, who doesn't like having a label that he's going to be sidelined for an indefinite amount of time. And from early on in this season, I think it was Joel kind of pushing to be like, hey, I want to be out there. I want to be available for the team. I don't want to be shut down for an extended period of time. So I think it was really the Sixers trying to do right by him. And it's both sides at this point are surprised, confused, concerned, and looking for answers. So I don't think there's necessarily a rift between Joel and the organization, more so that they're both kind of just in this same boat right now, looking for answers and wondering, how it got to this after what we saw from him last year, obviously in the playoffs and then playing in the Olympics. I think they thought that if he missed a little bit at the beginning of the season, like you said, that he would be able to play pretty consistently throughout this year, other than back-to-backs, and that clearly hasn't been the case. So I don't think the relationship is necessarily strained, but I do think they're just in this weird kind of holding pattern where they don't know what the next best move is or what the future holds.
Yeah, and then you have what Paul George said the other night. Essentially, they're losing at home by 50 to a Chicago Bulls team who's not very good, and he's out there saying, we're not a championship team. We're not even a playoff-level team. Well, he signed a max contract. He's a part of that team. I commend him somewhat by basically saying we stink. That being said, how disappointed are they in what they've got from George?
Yeah, I don't think there's, any world where they're not disappointed, Mike. This is a guy that, like you said, 4-year max contract, thought could kind of come in and be the missing piece. And that could be a guy to kind of keep the team afloat when Joel was, going to miss games. He was always going to miss games. He always does. And I think they thought Paul George combined with Tyrese Maxey's continued development would kind of be a guy that could come in and make this team competitive and win games and keep them in the playoff picture. Even when Joel was sidelined, clearly no one expected Joel to miss as many games as he has, but Paul George has been a complete non-factor, honestly, for lack of a better word. He looks like a role player. He's been playing like a role player. There's no real passion or desire or anything coming out of him. So he was completely correct in his assessment of the team, but I think he was probably the wrong messenger to be giving that message because, as a guy that was brought in to be a leader, a veteran, a player like that, it clearly hasn't worked. And him saying that is kind of stating the obvious, but he's a big part of the problem for why the Sixers team hasn't lived up to hope or expectations.
Yeah, I would agree. I think a lot of people thought you're substituting Paul George for Tobias Harris. That's an upgrade right there. Even if George isn't a max player anymore, you just figured, hey, you're just getting a more productive NBA player than a guy that you let walk out the door. That hasn't worked, but a lot hasn't worked, Michael. Where else has this thing gone off there? Is it as simple as, well, Embiid's hurt, George hasn't been that good? The rest of this team is not anything like it looked like when they started this season.
Yeah, and I'm pretty quick to point the finger at Nick Nurse in this season, Mike. I know obviously there's some built-in excuses with the injury issues and the lack of continuity, but night in, night out on a daily basis down at Wells Fargo Center, we're just watching a basketball team that doesn't look motivated, looks disinterested, looks, disjointed, looks like they're not even running an NBA offense. It looks like they're just picked 5 guys up from the YMCA and said, hey, go run some ball screens and space the floor and shoot threes. There's no intricate, plays or anything like that. And the Paul George situation, like obviously most of the onus is on Paul George, but I think Nick Nurse has done a really poor job of clearly George has been struggling. There hasn't been plays to get him going. He's not initiating offense. He's not coming down a lot of screens. He's kind of just standing around as a role player. And in that situation, I think it falls on the coach to kind of get him involved. So I think that, fault goes from top down. Obviously, some of the signings that Daryl Morey made over the offseason, we just talked about Paul George, a huge extension for Joel. Some of the guys he brought in, Eric Gordon, Kyle Lowry, these guys haven't panned out. So I think the fault can go basically all the way up to the general manager and then down throughout the roster. There's no one really that escapes blame in my book for the way this season has gone.
What about Morey? You lose by 50. The last time I remember the Sixers losing by 50, they didn't lose by 50, but they're down 50. The last time I remember them losing by 50 to the Spurs, Jerry Colangelo was in there, and Hinkie was out the door about 2 weeks later. Is that the kind of loss that has the organization thinking about a Morey or a Nurse, or is this just, hey, this season has gone so far off the rails, let's not make any knee-jerk reactions here?
Yeah, I don't think it's one specific game necessarily, Mike, but I do think if you take the macro view and at the end of the season, you kind of take back and you look at how some of these signings have gone and you look how the team has played and the way they're not responding, the way the roster just hasn't gelled. I think, to me, both guys should be fair game in evaluations this offseason. I know Daryl still has a couple years on the contract. He's still viewed very highly and fondly within the Sixers organization. I think there's still faith that he can put together a championship team. I'm not sure where the internal view is on Nick Nurse right now. I know the fan base is ready to see him gone, and understandably so. At the same time, 2 years in, obviously they just got rid of Doc Rivers after 3 years, Brett Brown before that. So we're talking about potentially a 4th coach in a 6-7 year span. Not great optically, which is something the Sixers consider. But I think just the way the season has gone, this past loss was just kind of a microcosm of the whole season. And absolutely, I think it would be a failure by the organization to not evaluate, everyone from roster to coach to front office after the way the season has gone.
Crazy it has gotten this bad. You wrote over at 97.3 ESPN.com, obviously shut everybody down. Embiid seems obvious that he wouldn't come back. What about George? What do you do with Maxey? You still have 20-plus games to go.
Yeah, that's the tough part, Mike. I mean, to me, Paul George specifically started off the season dealing with injury issues. He's had the pinky injury issue he's been dealing with. There was a report from Shams that he was getting shots to play in the games. Doesn't look like himself. Not that that's excusing his play on the season, but I think he's a guy that's banged up, obviously an older player. Shutting him down, I think, should be the next step after Embiid. Take the brakes off Maxey. I don't think you shut Maxey down entirely. I don't even think he would want that given how much he likes being out there, but you can scale those minutes back, maybe give him some rest nights. And let the young guys play. The one thing the Sixers have, if we want to kind of search for a silver lining in this waste of a season, is they do have some promising or at least intriguing young players on that roster. We're talking about obviously like Justin Edwards, Adem Bona. They just brought in Lonnie Walker, Quentin Grimes, who they got at the deadline. I would let these guys get, more minutes and kind of see what they have in order to decide if any of them can be contributors, beyond this season as rotation players, and playing them more minutes should go hand in hand with this team continuing to lose games. So I think that's really the best course of action. Let the young guys play, see what you got, and hopefully, those losses stack up and you're able to hold on to that top 6 pick in the 2025 NBA draft.
So Embiid, George, tradable next in the offseason? I mean, is that where they have to think, or they have to say, let's just hope again these guys are healthy? What's the best move are they even tradable?
I think hope is definitely the best bet, Mike. I don't see a situation where Joel's contract is tradable at this point, especially if he misses the rest of the season with all these, questions lingering and looming about his long-term future and health. I can't think of any team that would be willing to take on that contract. Paul George, it would be slim pickings. There were some rumors that the Warriors were interested in him leading up to the trade deadline and had reached out to the Sixers about a potential deal. I would imagine that maybe there would be one or two, fringe contenders or teams that want to be in that contender conversation over the offseason that think, maybe a Paul George addition could help put them over the edge. But I think the most likely scenario is that both of those guys will remain on the Sixers books next season, and they have to hope that they can just play more than they did this season.
What's it like up there right now? I mean, this is a place that's sold out every night, generally, for the last 8 years. The place was always into this team. Has the fan base turned on this team?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. It's reminiscent of, you would know, you were a lot of these games in the process years where the upper bowl is largely empty. There's rows of where no one's sitting there. The tickets are on sale the day of on Ticketmaster for $2, $3, $4. And some fans are still showing up, to their credit. It's not like it's empty. There's still, a decent contingent of fans that have been there, but they've been quick to vocalize the boos, quick to let their, frustrations kind of hurt. And it's just, it's still something to do. At this point, it's the team, like the process years where you maybe buy tickets for the opposing team. If, LeBron's coming to town, Steph's coming to town, something like that, as opposed to buying it to watch the Sixers. But yeah, I mean, it's a far cry from the raucous crowds that we've become accustomed to during the Embiid era, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing because you're right. You look at – I want to get your take on this too. I get so many people that text in and talk about I think that people have turned on Josh Harris mainly because he owns the Commanders. I mean, if you took that portion out of it, I don't know if he's hated as much. And, I said this the other day. Listen, the guy has tried everything. He's never said no. It's like, hey, can we trade for Jimmy Butler? Yes. Can we sign Paul George? Yes. Can we fire Doc Rivers? Yes. Can we hire the best coach, Nick Nurse? Yes. Can we, generally everything they have done has been in NBA circles, and the fans have said, I like the moves they have made. They just haven't worked for whatever reason. So I don't know that I can sit here and blame Harris. I know a lot of people don't like him because of the process and thinking that that's part of the issue, but I can't put a lot of blame on the ownership group here, or am I wrong about that?
No, I'm with you, Mike, and I think we've even talked about this in the past. To me, Josh Harris is pretty much what you want in an NBA owner. Lets the team spend money. He isn't especially frugal, like you said. He's dished out, multiple max contracts on players that the guys that he puts in position in the front office have decided, these are good moves. And he, opens the checkbook and gives the thumbs up for the deal. So to me, I have a tough time blaming Josh Harris. If you want to blame him for some of the structural things and maybe the way the team goes about handling injury issues or updates, or maybe some of the vagueness in terms of reporting and the way things are handled, if you think that goes all the way up to ownership, which it might, I don't know exactly how that power structure works, but that's fair. But in terms of team building, to me, like you said, the fact that he's the Commanders owner now, which is, clearly the rival of the Eagles, doesn't help his perception in Philly. But I don't have many complaints about the way he's run the Sixers in terms of ownership. Like you said, has no problem letting the front office sign guys. There's been guys in and out, coaches in and out. So I think he's done what he's been told that is right moves, and they just haven't panned out.
Yeah, I mean, I get the whole Commanders thing. If you're like this so gun-ho Eagle fan and you just can't stomach that he owns that team, I don't know. I mean, you're up there more than I am, but is he? People said like he's an absent owner. He sits in the front row every night. I don't know if he's there as much right now, but for the last 10 years, he sat in the front row with his wife almost every single game. He doesn't get involved, like doesn't meddle. He doesn't talk a lot. You don't ever hear Jeffrey Lurie talk. John Middleton rarely speaks. I don't even know who owns the Flyers. So I just like, I don't know why people all of a sudden are going after. I mean, I do understand there's this, you get this base of people who hated the process and kind of are now saying this is a result of all of that. I don't know how this mixes in with that. I just find it to be an interesting thing that now this is what losing happens. You look at everybody. I just feel like the ownership group, I don't know, they are committed. Are they committed to winning? I think so. They've tried. It just hasn't worked out for whatever reason, which goes to when you look at the ownership group and moving forward here, are they committed to Joel Embiid? Are they committed? They signed that deal. They obviously were, but do they want to make this work with Joel, or do they have to now think, maybe it's time to cut ties?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have to be committed to him at this point, Mike. Like you said, just based off that contract. I mean, if hindsight was 20/20 and they could have known the way this season was going to play out and the way Joel has looked and the way that knee has, not healed the way they hoped, and they could go back, my guess is no, they probably wouldn't have signed him to that extension. But I do think that there's some loyalty, obviously, to Joel. He's been through a lot with this team and this franchise and this city. A lot of good times. Obviously, the playoff success hasn't been there. But I do think there's a real hope on both sides to move forward with this pairing. I think that's why this little time period right now is so important, because they're really trying to figure out what the best course of action is moving forward and hopefully get him healthy where they can still have him as the center point of the team. So, moving forward, it'll obviously depend on how this knee heals, but I do think that right now on February 26th, with like a month and a half left in the season, that the goal and the priority for the Sixers moving forward is still to get Joel Embiid right and to continue to try to build the championship caliber roster around him.
It's funny, you say championship caliber roster. I think there's a lot of people in the listening audience just laughing away right now, thinking about where this team is. Right? I mean, and it felt like in September, as they're getting ready for training camp, that they're on the precipice of being one of these teams in the East, as they have been for the last 6, 7, 8 years. And here we are now. I mean, you're talking about a team that essentially needs to lose on purpose because how devastating would it be if they lost that draft pick?
Yeah, I mean, nightmare scenario, Mike. Absolute worst case scenario. The one silver lining of terrible seasons like this in general is getting that reward at the end in terms of a high draft pick, getting to infuse some young talent into this team, which is exactly what the Sixers are going to need moving forward with so much money dedicated to these 3 stars on their roster. They're going to need to fill this roster out with young, cheap talent if they want to kind of bounce back and get back into that contender conversation. So, I mean, going through all the losing and turmoil and just, downright ugly basketball of this season to then not even get rewarded with a draft pick in the draft in June would be, not only devastating for the fans, but also just devastating for the franchise moving forward. So that's why, to me, it's everything you can do to keep that draft pick you need to do for the rest of this season.
All right, here we go. Embiid has never once been interested in winning. Ever since he came into the league, he's always been about himself. Remember, he fought so hard to win an MVP award. You cannot win with Embiid. Do we look at Embiid and say, look, great player, can't win a championship with?
I mean, I certainly think it's fair to say that, especially at this point in the season. We're talking about, a guy that was here for 10 years. And, I've been eternally optimistic about Joel Embiid in the process throughout, the entire time since it started. You and me have talked dozens and dozens of times, and I've always had a pretty optimistic spin. That optimism has certainly been tested, and it's running pretty low this season. And I understand why so many people feel that way about Joel Embiid. He hasn't been able to elevate this team in the playoffs, and now, even at full health, he hasn't been able to do that. And health now for him is far from a given. So it's, I'm not ready to completely turn the page on the Embiid era and say that they can't win with him moving forward, but I don't begrudge anyone in the fan base for feeling that way after what they've seen this season, for sure.
All right, couple more texts real quick with Michael Kaskey-Blomain as they continue to come in. Matt from Cape May says, Mike, anyone who had expectations for this team to be anything other than what they are is delusional. Then he basically is saying every NBA analyst, expert around the league, they're all delusional because I don't know anybody who thought this Sixers team was going to be this.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, you could have maybe not thought that this was not going to be a championship contender, but I genuinely don't know anyone that thought this wouldn't have at least been a playoff team, a team competing for a top, 4 to 6 seed in the Eastern Conference. I don't think anyone could have foreseen quite how far off the rails this season went, even if you weren't super big on the Paul George signing, which I know a lot of people weren't.
Yeah, and by the way, Michael, like you mentioned Embiid, okay, even if Embiid was not as healthy, and he only played 50-plus games, they went out and got Drummond to kind of cover for that, and he ends up getting hurt. So it was like, hey, we know Embiid can't make it through a season. Let's go get an all-star level center because that's one of our biggest problems. Whenever Embiid goes out, we struggle. So let's fortify that position. They fortify that position, and that blows up in their face. So it has been – to say that, fine. You might say these guys were older. How did you not see that they were going to break down? Paul George played 70-plus games last year. I mean, I don't know how you were going to had a crystal ball to say he was going to hurt his pinky. I mean, just think about that. His pinky, for God's sakes. Yeah. MKB, read him over at 973ESPN.com. His latest is up on the Sixers' need to get that draft pick. Thanks, MKB.
Thanks, Mike. Good talking to you.
Yeah, man. He'll be back. And, of course, the Sixers tonight against the Knicks. You can hear that game on 97.3 ESPN.
It's Joe and Q with Joe Fortenbaugh and Q Myers. Middays on 97.3 ESPN.
People get innovative and they find a way to improve their chances of success. They do it within the legal guidelines. And then when they go out there and no one can stop it, all of a sudden we have to stand up and say, this is unfair. Bull crap. Now everybody hates the tush push, yet only one team can do it.
Listen to Joe and Q, weekdays from noon to 2 on 97.3 ESPN.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds. With that kind of money, you could go big. The next time you're out to dinner with friends, you can order the shrimp cocktail for the table. And maybe you'll realize it only comes with 4 shrimp after you've already given away 3, but that one shrimp will be so good. And if you switch and save hundreds, you can get shrimp all the time. Switch to Progressive and you could save big time. For shrimp. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states. Potential savings will vary.
Are you annoyingly inattentive? Do you watch a movie and then ask a zillion questions because you weren't paying attention? Do people ask, how do you sleep at night? Then you should get a mattress from Mattress Firm. They can help anyone sleep. Mattress Firm's President's Day sale ends soon. Get a king bed for a queen price. Save up to $700 plus a free adjustable base with select Sealy mattresses. Get matched at Mattress Firm. Sleep at night. Restrictions apply. See store or mattressfirm.com for details.
It's the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
I have everybody's attention now.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, I've been telling you about my friends over at the Nizam's Indian Restaurant, Route 40 in EHT. They've been ranked the number 2 best restaurant in the entire state of New Jersey. But what I like best is the opportunity to go out with friends and family or a corporate event or a big party, because they have the space and the room in the restaurant to carry the entire party. You can do the whole thing right there on site, corporate events, private parties, or just a big family event. They're open 7 days a week, 11:30 to 9:30. They have a lunch buffet on the weekends from 11:30 to 3. You can check out all their fan favorite dishes like the chicken tikka masala, the butter chicken, the naan bread. They got vegetarian dishes as well. So check out my friends over at the Nizam's Indian Restaurant right there on Route 40 EHC in front of Boscov's. When we come back, it's football at 4.
You don't need a President's or Valentine's sale. Get to Matt Black Kia and save every day with over 1,100 new Kias in stock or en route. All with 0 down, 0 payments until May. Even low 1.9% financing for 60 months on 25 Kia Sorento and Sportage SUV. So bring any trade, even if you're buried in a loan or lease. Matt Black Kia wants to get you released and into your new Matt Black Kia. Like the all-new 25 K4. Just $129 per month lease with 0 security deposit and only $36.95 due. Matt Black Kia, your PA and New Jersey Kia superstores in Abington, Egg Harbor Township, and Toms River, or right to your front door.
It's gotta be a Matt Black Kia.
With approved credit, $1,389 per thousand finance. Not all will qualify. Credit may affect down payment. Offers can't be combined. Go to MattBlackKiaNJ.com for complete details or 888-505-6670. Price includes all costs to be paid by consumer except for licensing, registration, and taxes through KMF. Rebates and incentives to deal expires 3/4/25. Matt Black Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, and on Route 37 in Toms River. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds. With that kind of money, you could go big time and switch to the expensive shampoo with amino acids. Sure, you don't know what those are or why you need them, but it sounds very impressive. And if you switch and save hundreds, you can massage it into your scalp every day. Now, if only you can get people to lean toward your head to smell those aminos. Switch to Progressive and you could save big time. For shampoo? Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states. Potential savings will vary.
Breaking news coming in from Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win, breakaway, pick six, three-point shot, underdog win, buzzer beater, shootout, walk-off, and absolutely every play in between is amazing. From football to basketball and hockey to baseball, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus only. Must be physically located in New Jersey.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. The Inside the Birds podcast you can get on all podcasting platforms. Just search Inside the Birds on the YouTube channel, and you can get more from this man right here, Geoff Mosher, who is back for another edition of Football at 4 as the Combine is going on. There's a lot of NFL news, notes, rumors, and at the top of those news, notes, and rumors, Geoff Mosher seems to be the tush push. That is the big topic of conversation about everywhere right now. I want to get your thoughts on whether or not you believe the play is legal and fair. Should it be something that the league does look into?
Well, that's a great question, Mike. And if the people who don't like the tush push and want it outlawed, their best case would probably be to go like deep into the rule book. I heard you guys talking about it earlier. I think you guys were, where there is some sort of blurry gray area on whether or not you're allowed to propel somebody forward, right? You definitely can't pull, but there's some gray area about propelling somebody else forward and causing an obstruction for the defense. And I would add onto that, there's some gray area in the idea of forward motion, because a lot of tush pushes, you get into the scrum and there have been a lot of stalemates, but then at the last second, the push either lets you pick up the extra yard or extra yards. Whereas if it's a run, we talked about this on the podcast this morning, me and Adam. Let's say you run an outside zone to the right, Barkley carries the ball. He's met immediately by a linebacker sort of right at the line of scrimmage, and then they start kind of stalemating, they will blow the whistle for forward motion a lot of times if there's no further traction. And that's really hard to do when you see a scrum of people. So I think that if you're against the tush push and you're trying to make the best case, you can use those two examples of the legality or the irregular enforcement of it. Like there were like the whole pass interference thing where they weren't really enforcing it at one point with hand usage on corners past 10 yards. And that they never said they changed the rule, right? They only said that they were going to reinforce the rule. Same thing with the RPOs and ineligible linemen downfield. When RPOs really took the league, they were the Eagles were one of the first teams to really exploit it and use it. And then as they got into the offseason and realized that teams were kind of getting away with some things, they cracked down on it, but it was never something new. They just said they were reinforcing it. So those are the areas I think that they look into discussing.
Yeah, the thing that I have said, Jeff, is I just feel like to have 2 or 3 offensive players aiding your momentum forward, I just don't find that to be fair. I think that it gives the offensive team an unfair advantage. The defense is not allowed to use leverage. They can't push off of their teammate to try to block field goals or anything, really. So for the offense to have, I rewatched a bunch of the tush pushes. I'm like, all right, let's see what this play really looks like. Mm-hmm. Some of them Hurts doesn't get touched at all. He just falls forward, and some guys are just kind of standing there in case they need him. The one in the Super Bowl, he had Goddard, Gainwell, Johnny Wilson, all 3 of them almost lifted him up in the air. And he was like crowd surfing across the goal line. And I'm like, that's really kind of not the spirit of the game, I guess, or the rule.
Well, to your point, I think if the NFL wants to do this, if the competition committee has enough traction, which I'm not sure there will be because you've had some people come out to, in the last 24 to 48 hours from other teams that are not in favor of banning the tush push. But what the NFL could do is crack down on certain things you're mentioning that happen during the tush push that have some illegality to it that makes executing the tush push a little bit more difficult. And to your point, where it is a disadvantage of the defense, there was a time when I think you were allowed to sort of propel yourself over the line of scrimmage to block a field goal, right?
Yes.
And then the NFL said you can't do that anymore. That's an unfair advantage. So those are things that I think will be a stronger arguments than player safety, which I think you can make the argument without the evidence. I know that
I was going to say there's no evidence right now of player safety being a problem.
Right. So I wouldn't make it my starting point, but I would point to Frankie Louvu jumping over the pile multiple times and saying, yes, we don't have evidence yet of a lot of injuries because of this, but we don't want to. Let's be proactive on it. If we're going to have players sort of sacrificing their bodies, jumping over piles, in some cases when the ball isn't even snapped and they're landing on their neck or head, I think that that's the route that you would have to go to instead of just saying it's an unsafe play without any evidence to say so. You have to sort of predict what people might be doing in the future to stop it or to continue to do it as an example, to be proactive.
All right. Yesterday, Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni both spoke at the NFL Scouting Combine. Roseman said something about the Eagles evolving in how they view their players. This is what Howie Roseman said in Indianapolis yesterday. Jeff, take a listen.
To kind of put us in a box and say, hey, we're not going to play. And I'm not saying that you're saying that we're not going to pay because historically we haven't done that. I mean, part of what we do is evolve and look at things and see how things are affecting our team, how things are affecting the league, and seeing our place in that.
So what is this evolution that Howie Roseman is referring to?
Well, it's probably a number of things. First of all, they signed Saquon Barkley to a pretty big running back contract in the offseason, which is something the Eagles have not typically done in the Howie Roseman era at all, which is signing a free agent running back to big bucks right now. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to listen to what Howie just said, knowing what he did with Saquon, and extrapolate that going forward to Zach Bond. Will he spend market value on Zach Bond? So I think that it's fair to say, look, we know the Eagles want to re-sign Zach Bond, and they know he's going to make a lot more than the $3 million that he made last year. Adam and I have reported this. We've been told that if Howie could sort of give himself a do-over on the TJ Edwards thing, he'd probably do it. He never even made TJ an offer. I think a couple of weeks ago I told you he did, but I was mistaken. He never made TJ an offer. I think one thing you can probably go to sleep at night feeling is that the Eagles will at least make a competitive offer for Zach Bond. I mean, the price may get so it's just not manageable. But whereas in the past, it's a no, it could be a yes with Zach Bond. But I will also say this, Mike. I don't know if Howie intended to do this or was meaning that, but Adam and I talked about in the podcast I dropped this morning. The Eagles used to be a team that was much more to the extremes on their beliefs, whether it was analytical testing, like athletic testing, we must have this, character, we must have this, or, we won't take. There have been a lot of things that have been very predictable about their way of going about getting players. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it hasn't. But they've changed a little bit. I don't think they're as to the extremes on things in the past. For example, when they drafted Landon Dickerson in the second round, right? Remember all the medicals? He had 4 surgeries in college.
Which is why he was in the second round.
Absolutely. A top 25 prospect on talent alone. And the Eagles took him. And this is not a guy who is an amazing athletic tester. He's a good athlete, but he's a big mauling offensive lineman who's a great talent for what he does. But he had a medical history and he wasn't the most freak of nature athlete in the world. And yet the Eagles took him. So I think that was a sign that they were past the days of we're going to pass on DK Metcalf because of a neck thing, or you know what I'm saying? They're more willing to take the risk there if they really believe that the player is going to be the value that they're getting him at.
Well, do you read what he said, Jeff, as we value tackle, defensive tackle, edge rusher, guard, more maybe than linebacker. But in this instance, we feel we have in-house options, or we feel better about drafting to replace that spot than we do linebacker. So we may get out of our comfort zone and pay the linebacker something maybe we wouldn't have done in the past.
Sure. And they're playing a different defense. And yet another example of how they have been adaptable in their process, Mike, is that ever since they hired Nick Sirianni and went with Jonathan Gannon as the defensive coordinator, they have played these 5-man fronts and 3-4 defensive structures that you never would have imagined the Eagles would have played. Because even after Andy Reid, when they went, Chip Kelly brought the 3-4, but as soon as they got rid of Chip, they went right back to being the 4-3 with Howie Roseman in power. And never did they draft 340-pound nose tackles like Jordan Davis, right? So they're shown you that they are willing to change with the times, to get with the new defensive philosophies of limiting explosive plays and the new defensive fronts, which are more multiple now than they ever were for the Eagles in the 90s and 2000s. And so linebacker is important for what Vic Fangio does. And Zach Bond in general is a talented player who is a big piece of what they do and a big part of Vic Fangio's defense. So again, I do think, I know they want him back, and it'll just see. The one thing is where I think the Eagles will always be the Eagles is if the market just explodes for a player, they're not going to change their valuation of a guy just because the market did. They're going to stick to their guns on that.
All right, here's what else Howie Roseman said. He explained that everything the Eagles do is this. Take a listen.
Everything really is player dependent. When we talk about situations, it depends on the quality of play of the player, the person that we're talking about. And so you don't want to make any exceptions. Obviously, you have to have a vision of how you want your team to look. In the salary cap era, you have a certain number of resources that you can allocate, whether it's money or draft picks. And so whenever you do something, you're taking it from somewhere else. There's no way at the stage we are with our team that we can do something major without it coming from somewhere else.
All right, that was really in reference to being asked specifically about Myles Garrett. Their name has kind of been involved there. Everybody always puts the Eagles involved with anything major, but it got some fuel on the fire yesterday when Jeremy Fowler from ESPN suggested that the Eagles would be, 1, very aggressive as a team in the trade market, and 2, if a division rival was interested in Garrett, that Roseman would no way allow that to happen. Now, his answer was kind of diplomatic, but where do you think the Eagles' mindset is on being aggressive in the trade market on a player of that magnitude, Geoff Mosher?
Yep. I think there's a fine line between being aggressive, which they will do, and being unreasonable, which could be the result depending on what the price tag is for both trade and new contract for Myles Garrett. Clearly, they could use a type of, I mean, anybody could use a pass rusher like Myles Garrett. Let me be clear on that. But the Eagles in particular, who build in the trenches, they're going to go into next year really with Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt as their top two edge rushers. And those guys are really nice emerging talents, but they're not Myles Garrett yet. And who knows what's going to happen to Bryce Huff. So you could say there's a little uncertainty, especially if Brandon Graham retires, at their most important position on defense with what they can get on a year-round basis. Those guys that I mentioned should improve, but they're not necessarily all-pro players like Myles Garrett. So you would imagine the Eagles would want to be aggressive. They will look into it. But again, they have the 32nd pick. Most NFL teams, Mike, will tell you that they don't see 32 first-round prospects in every draft, right? They usually typically see between 17 and 24, depending on the talent level. So the 32nd pick, a lot of teams will view as sort of a second-round talent. So it's not that attractive if you're just bandying the 32 overall pick. Then maybe you get into players. But then also, Mike, the other side of that is if you trade for Myles Garrett, and I think this is what Howie was alluding to, he's going to want a new contract. And he's so good that his contract should be one of the best or highest paid contracts on defense in the NFL. Well, guess what? At this time next year, no matter what happens with the Eagles, as long as Jalen Carter is still Jalen Carter that we just saw this past last year, you and I are going to be talking about Jalen Carter being in line for an extension that's going to make him the highest paid football player, defensive football player in the league, most likely. So can you have two of those at the same time right there next to each other, along with the fact that you've got Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, and, right now Cam Jurgens is available for an extension? That's where Howie was getting into, well, you got to give here and take there. You're going to pay Zach Bond, well, and you're going to extend Cam Jurgens. Well, then money's got to come out of somewhere else. So that's what complicates the matters with Myles Garrett. But again, the Eagles are smart and they're aggressive. If the offer isn't there, if the Browns aren't getting a ton of great offers for Garrett, or if Garrett says, I want to be an Eagle and I'm willing to pay or play on a contract that's not, making me the highest paid defensive player in the league, then the door is always open there.
Well, that's the big thing, is he has been adamant that he wants to play for a Super Bowl contender. He might have to have some concessions as well. You want to play for a Super Bowl contender? Well, we can't afford you at the number that you get from Cleveland, who wins 3 games. So what do you want to do, buddy?
Right. It's been done before. I mean, there have been plenty of players, big name free agent players, who have gone either signed contracts or, been involved in trades and didn't necessarily get their contract reworked and have just to get into a better scenario. So we will see what unfolds over the next few weeks.
Well, what do you make, like the beginning of that forget the Myles Garrett part of it. He said, people around league circles think that they will be the most aggressive team in the league, or one of the most aggressive. He actually said one of the most aggressive, if not the most aggressive, in trades this offseason. I'm thinking, where do they need a trade, or what are they looking to trade for, or who on their roster would they trade? Like that comment kind of opened my eyes a little bit.
Well, it could be a trade for, it could be a trading of. Adam and I have talked on the podcast about Dallas Goedert, a very good player who's been hurt by injuries, especially last year, who comes up on the last year of his deal with no guaranteed money left. And, Mike, you've been around long enough to know that when a good player doesn't have any guaranteed money, which means no security on his contract, that's when he says, hey, we got to do something here. And, the Eagles may not want to do something there with a player, who's getting a little older and has been beat up a lot. So does he have to be traded?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, it's an ironic situation, Geoff. Talking with Geoff Mosher, Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast. They had 32 a couple years ago. They traded out, moved into the second round, and drafted Goddard when they had Zach Ertz here. They have 32 again. Mm-hmm. Could they do a very similar thing? Because, as you just said, they might not take a tight end to groom. They might take a tight end to replace.
Well, the key from a couple of years ago that you're referring to when they had 32 was the Ravens wanted that 32nd pick. And we see this occasionally, usually for a quarterback. Like the Ravens took Lamar Jackson there because they want that fifth-year option. They want, especially on a quarterback, an extra year of control at a price that is more manageable than top of the market. The 5th-year option is usually a big pay bump, but it's not necessarily top 5 at your position money. That's why it was really shocking in a way that the Panthers did it last year, traded up to 32, I think, to get Xavier Legette. It's like you really wanted the 5th-year option on a wide receiver that badly, but that's why the Panthers are the Panthers. But usually teams do that for the quarterback. Will there be a quarterback at 32 overall, 32nd overall this year that someone's going to want to move in? Or is there going to be some other player, again, like Xavier Legette for the Panthers last year, that a team's going to want to be aggressively move into that spot just for the 5th-year option?
Yeah, that's something definitely, the 32, to keep an eye on. We're talking with Geoff Mosher here. Of course, it's football at 4, the NFL Combine. And as we know, they most likely at 32, if they stay there, you're looking at the old faithfuls. Defensive line tackle, edge rusher. Is there another spot, Geoff Mosher, you would say I wouldn't be surprised if they invested in round number 1 at 32? Or even traded up for.
I would say tight end and offensive line are never – well, offensive line we know is never a surprise with the Eagles, and depending on what happens with Becton, even though they have Steen there, they are always drafting for the future at that position, so that wouldn't surprise me. Tight end for the reasons we just talked about, although I'm not sure at 32 the value will be there. But, Mike, one thing that we should talk about is what is the Eagles' plan for Cooper DeJean? Is it to keep him as that power versatile slot nickel, or is it to move him outside, which is where when they drafted him, they eventually figured he would go? Let's just assume for logic's sake that Darius Slay isn't back. That opens up the hole or the opportunity there for Cooper DeJean to move outside. And then you're looking at needing to get another nickel. But if you want to keep him at nickel because he's a big part of your sim pressure package, your run defense, just like having an extra sort of linebacker out there, the way he's so physical to play against the tight ends, then you might want to look for another outside corner. And as well as anybody, it's hard to find those really good outside corners on late day 2 or day 3. Usually those are day 1, day 2 guys.
Let me get your opinion on this. How valuable does a guy like Vic Fangio see what DeJean did this year and say, I don't want to have to replace that. I want to keep that guy because what he gave us made it so difficult for teams to be able to throw in the flats, seams, the way they like to play their defense. What he did as a slot made it so difficult for teams. So does Vic Fangio say, I actually value him more as a slot guy? And then they have, Rodgers, Ringo, all of those guys that were here. Do they look at those guys, or do they draft another outside corner as a possible guy that we're talking about at 32 or trade up for?
Yeah, so great question. I've actually spoken to a lot of coaches and NFL personnel about this over the years, not just about Cooper, but in general, for a similar situation. At first, I wouldn't be surprised if Vic marched into Howie Roseman's office and said, you better get another punt returner on this team, or you and I are brawling because there's no way this kid's returning punts for next year and putting himself in harm's way like he did all year long. But the answer that I normally get from personnel and coaches when I ask a question like that is, well, tell me what my options are. So I would say the Eagles and Vic Fangio love what Cooper DeJean brings to that nickel spot. And when you run sim pressures the way Vic does, which is, dropping an edge and rushing a second level defender, he's perfect. He's really good at that. And it's hard to do that from the outside corner spot because you're much further away from the quarterback, right? So you don't really see a whole lot of outside cornerback blitzes in any defense, let alone a Vic Fangio defense. So, but if there is the type of player available in round 1, round 2, who knows, free agency, who plays the nickelback spot physically, who can carry out those opportunities and demands that Vic Fangio asks, and you have the opportunity to move Cooper outside, then you do it. If you don't, you try to re-sign Isaiah Rodgers, maybe stick him outside and keep Cooper in the slot. It all just depends on what's available.
All right, Geoff Mosher, we have a lot happening this week with the Combine, and, of course, we'll have more on Football at 4, the Inside the Birds podcast is out. You can check that out as well with Adam and Jeff. And, of course, we'll have plenty tomorrow on the NFL Draft, the Combine, with Andrew, who will be joining us for Football at 4. Looking forward to all of the draft process. Don't forget, the NFL free agency opens on March the 10th. So we are closing in on that, and we'll have it all covered here on Football at 4. Thanks, buddy.
You got it, Mike. Take care.
All right, Geoff Mosher, everybody. It's Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and InsideTheBirds.com. And Bet365, whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. That's a big question for me, is what is the Eagles' view of Cooper DeJean in terms of, hey, we do not want to move him out of that spot. We want to make sure he is the slot guy, because what he brings for us in the slot is so hard for us to find with somebody else. So that they look for, when we talk about what are possibilities with pick 32, first round, if they want that pick or if they want to go outside the first round, the big question will be, I think, tackle, defensive tackle, edge rusher, and then possibly an outside corner, because I think the Eagles would be willing to draft an outside corner in the first round if, in fact, they want to keep Cooper DeJean in the slot. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. I want to thank everybody who is tuned in today. Don't forget, download the free mobile app thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City. It's free in the Apple Store, Google Play. You can message us through the app on your phone. We got so much more to go, including another edition of Nick's Nuggets right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Nick Earnshaw joined us with another edition of the Nuggets next. 4:30, Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Mike Gill with you till 6. Lot to do, lot going on. Nick Earnshaw is the host of the Shift podcast, and he is the producer of The Locker Room weekends on 97.3 ESPN. He's also ready for another edition of Nick's Nuggets right now on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. And there he is. Nick Earnshaw is back with more Nuggets for this Wednesday afternoon. I'm thinking it's a little later in the week. Unfortunately, we're not quite to the Thursday show, but we're having fun on a Wednesday. What's up, Nick?
What's going on, Mike? I love the new graphic for the Nuggets for the YouTube audience, for the X audience. It looks pretty good, I must say.
Yes, we got a lot of different graphics out there. Got a huge. In fact, I think right now we may have the biggest viewing audience that we have had at least since the middle of the football season.
So it's been a while. So I
don't know what's going on today. The algorithm must have kicked us up pretty good here. Appreciate everybody watching, everybody listening.
We love to hear that. And a perfect day to debut the new Knicks Nuggets graphic. I need to see flats only in there, though. It looked like Nuggets. Need the flats only graphic in there. Might have to put it at the bottom. Hashtag
We're talking
flats only.
Nuggets are different from wings.
They are a little different. They are a little different, but they're all in the same family. They're all in the same family.
I mean, that's the problem. You flat people think a nugget and a wing's the same thing.
They're all in the same family. And, something that has fallen flat is Paul George's podcast, Mike Gill.
Ooh,
okay?
Podcast P.
Podcast P, and that's going to be nugget number 1 for today. I know we have some audio. We're going to play it in just a second, but Paul George has finally decided to step away from the podcasting space for a little while and focus on basketball. He put out this clip of his podcast today. I think it was his last episode. Here is what Paul George had to say about podcasting going into the future.
This season is up to this point, man. It hasn't been what we envisioned. I know my goal when I first signed with Philadelphia was to bring a championship to these amazing fans here. I still remain positive about that, and that is still the case and where I'm coming from. With that being said, though, I want to let the Podcast P family know that after today's episode with Dwight, I plan to take a break from the pod just to focus on getting my body right, getting mentally right, and, help this squad make a push towards our goal to finish the season out, give ourselves a chance to be in contentions to compete for a championship.
Bravo.
Okay. There's a few things. There's a few things we gotta start with right here. Okay. He's had a podcast for a little while now. I remember that stat was floating around. I think it was true. It might have been fake, but whatever. I think it was. I think there was more podcast clips put out, even if it wasn't. It feels like there was. If there was more podcast clips put out from his show, then I think points scored for him this year. I mean, it's crazy. Okay. So there was that.
Well, he's got a better social media team than we do.
Well, here's the thing. The fact now he decides to take a break from his podcast. I mean, we're at the point now where Embiid's like, it seems like he's going to be done for the year. I'm just waiting. We're waiting for that report to come out. They're way under 500. They're pretty much out of it at this point. Nobody cares. Tickets are $2. They're barely going to be able to pay his contract is getting paid so much with these ticket prices that they're at now on some of these sites. They're 20-37, 2.5 games out of a play-in spot. Now you want to focus on basketball, Paul George. Podcast P, taking a break. All of a sudden, we got a month or two left in the season, and now you want to take a break. It's mind-boggling to me, Mike, what Paul George wants to put this out now. You might as well just continue the podcast through the summer because you're not going to be playing in June or May. Yeah, at the end of May, you're not going to be playing.
Yeah, we don't want you to focus now. Now's not the time we want you to focus. We want you to be, I mean, this was, I will say the one thing he said was the first time I heard him at least try to connect with the fans. He's like, I want to try to win a championship for these tremendous fans. Like, it's the only time I've ever heard him, say something that's like, hey, I care about being here. Hey, look, it's a little too late. It's the first step. I will say, George has done this podcast, my understanding, for a couple of years. It's not like he just started this podcast with the Sixers. And a lot of these guys do these podcasts in season. I think we all have this thing of you're distracted. Why are you doing this? All these guys do these podcasts. So to say that it's been a distraction or the reason is kind of odd that he's using that as, I'm going to focus on the season. The season is lost, Paul George. The season is lost.
Now, if he did this in October, November, different story, different tone that we're having, different discussion of that we're having here on a what's today? February 26th. After a season that's been absolute tumultuous at this point by the Sixers and Paul George. He's part of the problem. I mean, he's part of the problem. He has not produced this year. He just hasn't. He's been hurt. He's been unhealthy. When he's out there, he hasn't been that great. I mean, Tobias Harris is having a better season. He's the guy that he replaced. So, weird timing for this, especially after everything that's going on.
Well, and it goes back to that he has not endeared himself to the fans. The fans have not really embraced him. I would imagine this podcast, he talked to the two guys. He's like, man, I'm going to miss talking to you guys. I can't wait to get back there and be live with you guys. He wants to get back to L.A. and finish this season and get back there and do the podcast. But no, it has not gone. Look, there are certain people out there who will tell you, I knew this was going to happen. Paul George, there were a lot of Sixer fans who were indifferent about Paul George. There were some who downright did not want to sign him. This was not a universally well-liked signing. That being said, for people to say, you could see this season coming, no, you couldn't. Nobody could see this season going 20 games under 500 off the rails this bad. No, I mean, Paul George is an all-star, top 25 player in the league last season. What you're getting out of him right now, it's a complete, utter debacle and a failure. He has been a failure. So the podcast thing for him to come out and say that, it's too little too late. It's not endearing to anybody other than you should have done it before. That being said, I don't think him doing his podcast is why this season or his season has gone off the rails.
No, that's why it's like, dude, just keep doing your podcast at this point. Yeah. I mean, who cares? Like, who cares? This is not the reason you failed this year.
Look, Jalen Brunson does a podcast all year long. I don't think he's distracted. I'll take
the entire Knicks team on that podcast. Listen, they've struggled against good teams, but they're still in the mix. They're fine. So it's not the podcast P, all right? It's just not. And another thing that didn't endear him to the fans, what the heck was he doing when the Eagles won the NFC Championship game trying to go out to a convenience store or something? Remember when he got caught in all the mayhem on Broad Street or wherever he was after the Eagles won? What? Like, that's another, like, he doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. And the fact you're going out when the Eagles win the NFC Championship game stuck in between all that big crowd driving out there, and he looked miserable. He looked absolutely miserable in that photo that circulated online when he was out there driving around, going to the convenience store and getting, something to eat or something. Who knows? What are you going to 7-Eleven for or something when the Eagles won the championship? You think, Mike, all right, I want this to happen for my team and for us. But no, that didn't happen. We talked about it yesterday. You see the Eagles win, maybe that would have shown maybe we have a little effort in us. But there was a team last night that actually showed effort at the Wells Fargo Center last night.
Oh, I said Monday night, the Sixers stunk out the Wells Fargo Center, or the center as they call it. And last night, the Pittsburgh Penguins said, hold my beer. Man, They were awful. No defense by the Pens last night. I watched a lot of that game last night.
Yeah, I was tuned in. I'm ready to go nosebleeds for the Flyers now. I'm ready to move on over to the orange and black, because that side of the Wells Fargo Center, things seem to be at least moving in the right direction and have like at least a plan at this point. I don't even know what you call the team.
3 in a row. Yeah.
All right.
You're right, though, that to make the decision at the end of February when this team is now 20 games under 500, George is again, I go back to it, he has just been able to get it. It has not been able to connect with the fans. Just doesn't get it.
Just totally tone deaf. He does not get it. He just does not get it. All right. Moving along to the diamond, and we got to talk a little baseball. We have to. Phillies played today. Bryce Harper did get hit by a pitch, went back to Clearwater. It's according to Todd Zalecki. So that's going to be something to monitor throughout the spring training. Make sure Bryce is okay and ready for opening day, because he did get hit by a pitch earlier today. But that's not what I want to talk about, Mike. JT Realmuto. As you know, Major League Baseball is trying the ABS system for balls and strikes challenges. JT Realmuto was 2 for 2 on ball strike challenges today, according to Jason Stark, and had this quote as well. As soon as I caught the ball, I think that it was a strike, but I said, yeah, it's close, so I'm not going to take a chance, and I was right on both of them. So he said he could have challenged 2 more, he felt like, but did not because was a little nervous too. Mike, is this ABS thing? I think this is legit. I really like it, that the fact you could challenge an umpire right then and there and get an instant correction on it.
I don't know why it's not in place for this season. I get it. They couldn't make the decision or whatever. Who cares? The players should come together. The players in the CBA revise it and say, listen, this thing has worked. We all feel comfortable enough with it to go with it. It's our game. We're the ones suffering if it. We think it works well enough to do it. If you want to say, hey, can't get ready for the regular season, we want a little bit more testing, tell them after the All-Star break, we're going to pick it up. It's going to go in the minor leagues to start half the season, and once the All-Star break is over, we will then implement it into our game. It is working. It is fine. It is quick. It is easy. I don't know what the holdup is to wait till next season when you have the technology to do it right now.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it because we need to hold referees, officials, umpires accountable, and we just want to see it right. We just want to see all the calls made correctly. That's all, because there's some abysmal calls in baseball the past couple of years, and the balls and strikes, listen, say what you want. I mean, that box is not helping anybody. That box is not helping anybody. The one you got to watch on TV, it's not helping anyone. So to have the ABS system, something quick, it fixes it, it knows where it's at on the plate, boom, you can challenge it. It's over in an instant. I have no issue with it. Now, I don't like the idea of starting it mid-season. I would like they should have started it opening day and have it through the entirety of the season, because all it is getting the calls right. And as a consumer, as a fan, as a player, as a manager, everyone just wants to see the calls be correct. No one wants to argue.
Listen, I'm saying start the season with it, but if you want to say, hey, we want to do a little bit more testing, to say it's not ready by the All-Star break is preposterous. You don't need a whole year to continue with this. It's ready to go now. But if they want to continue the song and dance, fine. We're tinkering with it a little bit more in the minors. And then you don't need to wait till next year is my point. So, yes, I would rather start it now.
Yeah.
But if the worst-case scenario is start it at the All-Star break and the whole, the biggest, most important games of the year, the second half of the season, they have it ready to go for this season right now. There's no reason why they can't implement it into the game. Come on. It's a meeting. Sit at a table. Here's a pen. We're revising this contract. This whole verbiage that said we're going to start the 2026 season, no, we're starting it now.
Yeah, I think this one's a massive success. And, Rob Manfred needs successes. He has had too many. Pitch clock, good one by him. He has had too many. This would be a perfect example of getting something right, because everyone's tired of seeing bad umpiring behind the dish and getting calls wrong and trying to figure out where that box is on TV. And is this a strike? Is this not a strike? Because remember, you have to edit that box, and they don't do that with the one on TV, based on someone's height, where they're standing in the box, etc. The strike zone changes from batter to batter based on how tall they are, essentially. So
I've been saying that for years, that the biggest problem is that box is on there, and it's the same size box for every hitter. They don't change the box for for whoever, who's the
Aaron
second?
Judge and Jose Altuve.
Right, they have the same box.
Yeah, they can't be having the same box. So that I think the ABS, it'll help the fan, it'll help the consumer, and it also gets the calls right for the players. That's what I think so great about it. And JT Realmuto, don't be nervous. Keep challenging them. Challenge them all game long, because that's what I would do. I would use it to the extreme if I was a catcher.
One of the things I think Rob Thompson told the players, though, maybe not for on the catching side, but he's like, let the younger players use it. You're a veteran. You're already making the team. Use it, if it's egregious, but let the younger players be the ones that use it, because they're trying to make this team, not you.
Yeah, I just like if something's so far out of fetch, then you have to use it. So it's good. I think it's a good thing for the game. You have to implement it. I love it. I think this might even be better than the robo-ump idea. ABS, challenge, boom, get it right on the spot. Is this something good for baseball? All right, moving along to nugget number 3, and I want to talk about Josh Sweat a little bit. Adam Schefter made a comment on McAfee today that I thought was pretty interesting. I had it playing in my office in the background. All of a sudden, I hear Josh Sweat's name invoked. Schefter goes, Josh Sweat is going to kill it in free agency. That's via the Pat McAfee show, Mike. I think it's as good. I think he's as good as gone at this point, Josh Sweat. If you're an Eagles fan, if you know the Eagles, I think he's gone. They gave him a pay cut last year. The guy had an unbelievable Super Bowl. He's going to use that to his advantage. See ya, sayonara. Josh Sweat will not be an Eagle next year. And there's reports also that they're prioritizing Zach Bond as well. I just don't see them bringing Sweat back. This is why you're going to have to either draft well or bring in a Myles Garrett. So Sweat, sayonara.
Yep, I agree. I've said all along, I think he's the fourth of the 4 guys that, in fact, that they're prioritizing here. I think you're ranking them 1 as Zach Bond, 2 as Milton Williams, 3 as Mekhi Becton, and Josh Sweat, I think they know is going to get overpaid. They know that he's going to make now. Josh Sweat's younger than I thought. He's only 27 years old. I thought he was a little older than that, but still, I think they know. Look, Josh Sweat has been a solid player. He's never been a Pro Bowl player. He's not an all-pro. So I don't think the Eagles are saying, like, hey, we're losing an all-pro guy. We have a good, solid player that we really like, that we think that we've gotten a lot out of. He's had a lot of injury issues. Coming into the league, he had injury issues. So I don't think the Eagles want to take the chance to overpay. And I think some team will. I think some team is going to say, we need that guy. He's 27 years old. He's shined on the big stage. So, yes, I do think that Josh Sweat will get paid, and he will be a member of a new team.
Yeah, I think so, too. Starting in the offseason, it just felt like it, that he was going to be the guy on the outs. I think Milton Williams is on the outs, too. I mean, you saw what he did in the when they locker clean-out day. He wore his agent's hoodie. He's as good as gone, I think, too. I think someone's going to overpay for Milton Williams. So you're going to – and it's funny because, the Eagles want to build from the trenches. And these are 2 important guys that helped them get to a Super Bowl this year. So you're going to have to replenish those guys. But this happens to every team that wins a championship. You're going to lose players in that following offseason. They're going to go get paid because they just had such a big season. So when it comes to guys like Sweat, Milton Williams, it's a little interesting because it feels like the tables have flipped because Howie Roseman never really prioritized linebackers in the past. He's going to prioritize Zach Bond this season. He's not going to prioritize an interior lineman, an outside, an edge rusher, I should say, in Josh Sweat. So it feels like the tide's turning a little bit, and they're prioritizing different positions based upon the production they got out of last year.
Well, I've kind of described it as the Eagles feel fine drafting a tackle. They feel fine drafting an edge. Yep. They feel fine drafting an offensive lineman. They don't want to have to draft a linebacker. That's not where they want to spend draft capital. Now, they don't want to spend a lot of money on linebacker either, but as Howie Roseman said yesterday, like, things might look different. We have to evolve. They spent money on a running back last year, and this year I think they'll spend money on a linebacker.
Yep, I think they will too, and it has to be Zach Bond. It felt like Zach Bond was he hugging Sirianni at the parade and crying? Like, that guy wants to be an Eagle. I think they'll find a way to get that done. So, going to be a fascinating offseason. Combines underway. Mike, that's a 3-pack of nuggets for you, starting off with that flat podcast podcast, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah, very tone deaf by podcast P, I got to say. At this point, I think the fans would rather you keep doing the podcast and talking about which teams you'd rather play for next year.
Have you watched an episode since the beginning of the season? Because I haven't. I can't. I can't.
I didn't even know he had a podcast entering the year, and I don't watch any of these player podcasts. Like, I can't imagine somebody sitting there and watching any of these podcasts, like any of them. Well, Josh does, but exactly my point.
I watch some of them. I watch a handful of them, but the podcast P, no, I haven't tuned in since the beginning of the year, and I don't plan on tuning in. And, you can't anymore because he's leaving the pod for a little while because he's going to focus on the Sixers, Mike, and try and win a championship here.
Well, don't do it now. Don't focus on the Sixers now. You might as well wait till next year. What about the report here? Two teams, new teams, have surfaced in the Scott Lawton trade rumblings, the Devils and the Senators. That means up to 7 teams are interested in Scott Lawton. And according to Frank Cervalli, he says the Flyers are holding out for a first-round pick, and the best offer so far they've gotten is a second-round pick from the Winnipeg Jets. So we'll see if something surfaces on the Scott Lawton trade front. There's a nugget for you, Earnshaw.
I appreciate it. You got to have those Durso notifications on from 97.3. I know he's going to be all over it.
Yeah, Durso messaged me. He said they want a first-round pick. Cervalli also confirmed that they're looking for a first-round pick. The best offer they've gotten so far is a second-round pick. And I know Durso is working on a whole trade article right now for 97.3 ESPN.com. That'll probably be up either tonight or tomorrow as the deadline, March the 7th. Make sure you have your alerts on your phone so we can send that trade alert out to you when the big deal happens. If it happens, the Flyers will be sellers, that's for sure, even though they've won 3 in a row. Flyers-Penguins tomorrow night right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Earnshaw, thanks, man.
All right, Gill, I'll talk to you.
All right, coming up next, it's Rye or Sigh. Stick around. The Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. 5 o'clock, driving you home, Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. What's up? Mike Gill with you on the drive. We got Flyers tomorrow night against the Penguins. Now, they beat the snot out of the Penguins last night. That game was a 2-0 game, then it's a 2-1 game, and then I flipped the channel. By the way, I got to ask this question for anybody out there. Now, do you have Netflix currently or no?
I get Netflix back next month.
Did anybody else have problems with Netflix last night?
Uh-oh, I don't like hearing this.
I turned on the television, tried to turn on the Netflix, just a black screen. Every other app I have, Prime, Apple TV Plus, they all worked. The only one that did not work was Netflix, but only on my television. Like when I went into the bedroom on my
the box?
No, I have it on Google Chromecast.
Oh, okay.
It worked on that app, but on my television, it would not launch. I mean, it was just a black screen. I turned the TV on. I turned it off. I turned on all the other apps. I got out of them. It was driving me nuts.
Now, did you go into the settings and attempt to force stop Netflix and reboot it?
No.
Okay, so for those who don't know, if you have a smart TV, in your settings area under apps, if you can go to the app individually, force stop it, clear the cache, you could do all that stuff. And then if you reopen the app, it should be fine.
On the television?
On the television.
Yeah, I would never have thought it, but they're telling me to unplug the TV, then plug it back in and do this. And with the problem I have, you know what my problem is. I don't know the passwords. If I get out of the app and have to reinstall the app, I always go through the same problem where I don't know what the password is.
Well,
so it's like once I'm locked in, I can't have anything happen.
Well, I'm not telling you to don't ever log out of it. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there's a function. It's like on your smartphone, right? On your smartphone, we'll have the same thing. You have an Android like I do, Mike. You can go on your Android. I don't know if Apple does the same thing, but on Android and Windows and Linux and your smart TV, there's an area you go to, settings, apps. You go to the app individually. You open the settings, and you tell it force stop, wait maybe like a minute, reopen the app. It's A-okay.
All right, well, I will try that because I'm watching Flyers last night. It's 2-1, and then I think, was at the end of the second intermission?
Second intermission.
It was 2-1? No,
it was 3-1.
3-1, right. So I flipped over, and I'm watching this new show, this 0 Day. And it's
this the one with De Niro?
Yeah, De Niro is the former president. And actually, something happens with all the cell phones. Somebody got into all the operating systems, so Androids and iPhones. And they basically all of the operating systems everywhere for like the subway systems, the trains, everything, and they all got taken over. So there was crashes and stuff.
So basically, they stole the storyline from Live Free or Die Hard, and they just cast Robert De Niro.
Yeah, I guess I don't know Live Free or Die Hard.
Live Free or Die Hard. Basically, there's a techno terrorist who hacks everything on the United States.
Yeah,
every operating system, airplanes.
Yeah, that's
everything.
Essentially. So we're going to watch that. I can't get in. And I go back over to the Flyers game, and now it's 5-1.
Yeah, you missed Tyson Fjordster going out there and doing some magic. Him and the boys went out there and said, we're going to run up the score.
All right. We Ryan or Sigh on that one. Did you watch any Flyers last night? Were you in on the Flyers last night?
No, I'm not. Dude, I'll be honest. I've been watching the Flyers, but I haven't been closely watching them. Really since the All-Star break, and there's no reason as to why. Have you
only
been
played
following?
Twice?
What's that?
They've only played twice since the All-Star break.
Well, yeah, but it feels like a while, I guess, with that break since the last time I've watched them, I guess is my point. But I'm not out. No reason.
No, I mean, listen, I get it. Most people jump in on the playoffs or whatever. I mean, the Sixers are so bad right now. Now they're playing like last night was the Flyers, tonight's the Sixers. I don't even know that I'm investing a minute in the Sixers game tonight.
Not 1 minute they're getting from you.
Doubtful.
Wow.
I'm listed as doubtful tonight.
Okay, yeah. So just like every other Sixer, you're questionable.
I am. No, I'm doubtful. I'm not questionable. I'm doubtful. Either I'm closer to out, actually. I might as well just be Joel Embiid's already been ruled out tonight, and I would imagine he'll be out for the rest of the season.
Yeah, so let's start there for a second. How much of this Paul George nonsense have you discussed?
We did it a little bit last hour. I saw it. This guy's tone deaf. It's a shame. He seems like a really nice guy. I just don't think he gets the market. He's never connected with the fans at all. That said, I also add, I don't think that's why he has played poorly, because he was doing his podcast.
No, dude. All right, so we'll start with the Paul George stuff. For anyone just joining, for anyone that missed Mike Gill discuss it briefly in the previous hour, Paul George essentially came out yesterday at some point and said on his quote podcast and said, you know what? I need to take a break. It's time to focus on getting this city and this franchise a championship. I can't even say it, Gil, without laughing. I think he's doing this because he's embarrassed. Like, he's embarrassed to even hop on his podcast and start recording at this point because it's such a joke. It's so bad right now.
I don't know what his podcast is about. I don't know what he talks about. Does he talk about the team? Does he talk about the games? Or does he? So I don't know what he would be. That's what I'm saying. I don't know the context of why he would be embarrassed. If he's not talking about the team or the games, what does he care?
I just think he's embarrassed of the situation, like of himself, to where he doesn't even feel confident and good about doing a podcast and being on video. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so embarrassing, the situation that he's in. It's tough to put out a Paul George podcast right now because of it. He's a joke.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I just feel that, listen, I think the podcast has its audience from the LA team.
Sure.
You know, I don't think the Philly fans, there's just been no time where this guy is connected with the fans. It was not a universally embraced move. He has not been universally embraced because he wasn't even there to start the season. He was hurt on opening night, so he wasn't ready to start the season. He has no connection with this fan base because the team has been terrible. He has no moment or anything he has done that you were like, that's the Paul George I thought we were. Nothing hasn't happened. So I don't know how many Sixer fans he's got on this podcast, so I don't know why he would care one way or the other. At this point of the season, now you've only ticked the fans off more by going on the podcast and saying you're stopping the podcast because you want to focus on the season that the Sixer fans have bailed on.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, so what? Up to this point, you weren't trying to get a championship? Like, how does he not understand the perception of coming out and saying this? It's
right.
Just,
he made it seem as if because he was doing the podcast, he was unable to focus on the year.
Right. It's like, okay, yeah, let's not worry, Sixers fans, because the reason it's been so bad is because of the podcast. So now everything's good.
Yeah, it's a bad look for him. It's unfortunate. He seems like a nice guy. It has not worked here. He is not connecting. It is just another huge swing and a miss by this guy, completely tone deaf. Hey, I'm going to stop my podcast now,
right?
February 26th, when we're 20 games under 500, because I'm going to try to make the playoffs. Are you kidding me, dude?
It's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. And you bring up the point of Paul George. I don't even think he's connected with any fan on any level.
No,
right? And
no.
You look at how big of a deal this signing was, MG. Like, this was a huge free agent acquisition.
Dude, you pulled the Dr. J card to get this guy. It's not like this was like, hey, come play with us. No, you sent Dr. J, who took his shoes off in his house, to go try to pitch this guy to come here. This should have been something that people were partying in the streets that were like, dude, this is nobody really cared. It kind of fell flat because people were concerned about the injuries. And then he pretty much admitted that he didn't want to play here. I mean, he says on the day he gets drafted that he preferred, he wanted to go to L.A. Golden State was in the mix. But he comes here because the Sixers were the team that gave him the fourth year.
It's embarrassing. And, okay, if people had trepidation during the initial signing, it's like, okay, that's one thing. But he had an opportunity to prove people wrong. And it's like, this dude's an all-NBA guy, and he's been literally invisible. And I know injuries have played a role in that, but I feel like he's been so distant from the community as well. And I'd say that's a Paul George problem. But, Mike, I think that goes back to a 76ers problem. And I don't know where Josh Harris factors into this. I don't know if it's fair, but I just feel like every swing is a miss or they strike out looking, the 76ers. As far as, like, just their brand and connecting the fans with the team. Like everything they do is a swing and a miss.
I can't argue with the everything they do part being pretty much a swing and the miss. Look, they had a connection with the fans for a great run there. It didn't result on the court with what you wanted, but from 18 till last year, pretty much. I mean, there was the COVID years a little weird. People cared. People were invested. They bought jerseys. They bought tickets. They filled that place. They spent top dollar. They followed this team. They cared almost too much. They would complain on Tuesday night in February when they lost a meaningless game. They cared. They cared. Somewhere along the line, all the mistakes, all the swings, all the misses of moves that most people endorsed. Most people said, I like that move. That's a good move. That move is a good move. This is a good move. All of these moves, no one said, what are you doing? I almost lost it. But you know what I'm saying? It wasn't like people were like, what idiots? No, people were like, that's a good move. That's a good move. Man, that's a good move. I can't wait. I'm excited. Even when you thought, I'm not going to be excited about this season, they figured out ways to make moves to get you excited for the season. And this year, it has completely bottomed out. It's almost like they made these moves, they kept failing, but they were still relevant because Embiid's so good that he kind of covered everything.
Yeah.
And this year, the swings they took just completely missed. It was like Mackie Sasser trying to throw the ball back to the pitcher. He just can't. Something happened.
I know there's luck in all of this before we move on, but for me, I just have to try and figure out who's to blame. And I know it's not necessarily fair, and I know it's not one single person, but I do believe that besides Joel Embiid, that there is a factor of how they run things, man. Right? Like, for whatever reason, like, look at the Eagles. Everything they do, everything they touch turns to gold. Everything they do has a process, and they vet it, and they do their homework, and they're prepped. And, everything is calculated. But the 76ers, yes, they spend money, and yes, they're making moves, and yes, they have a guy in Morey who's good. But other than that, I just feel like they're flying by the seat of their pants. Is that fair of me to say, or is that
I don't know. I mean, like, if somebody walked up 2, 3, I guess 4 years ago now, and they said, you're the owner, Ryan, hey, man, Daryl Morey's available.
Mm-hmm.
You recommend that to the owner.
Yeah.
It's not like the owner says, no, we got a guy. He says, wait, we can get a better guy? How much do I got to write a check for? Like, he took information of, there's a guy that's available. Are you saying no, that I don't want to hire Daryl Morey?
No, I don't. I think Morey's been the one thing they've gotten right. Like, Morey's done a good job. I think it's more about their internal process, if that makes sense, like how they go about things. I know that's a broad stroke of a comment, but it just feels like they're doing. Not feels like, it's obvious they're doing a lot of things wrong, and I don't know.
Well, it on the surface, you're like. Again, it goes back to, you might be listening right now and like be mad at the Sixers, and then you're listening to me and you're like, you know what, Mike Gill, you're not off base. Like, there are a lot of moves that when they traded for this guy, I was like, that's a good trade. Or when they did that, or when they did. Like, at what point were you like, that was stupid? Why'd they do that? No, not really. And like, how do we get here? How do we get to this point where, I mean, I can't remember a move that they've made. Trying to think where people were just like, that was idiotic.
I mean, Al Horford was a little bit interesting, but he was a good player. We didn't think he was going to come to Philly and be
people
irrelevant.
liked when they got Horford. They thought that was a good move, and then it just didn't work out. I mean, for whatever reason, it did not work out. But when they signed him, people were like, we took that guy from Boston, and he's going to come over here, and he's going to be the guy, that's going to, he has like, and it just didn't work. And you're like, huh. And then when you felt like you were stuck with him, they found a way to trade him. And after that year, you were like, okay, this is going to be a year that like there's not a lot of interest, and they end up having a great year. I mean, it's like,
I know that's been one of the crazier things about this 76ers team is it's like a wow, good move. Oh, that was stupid. And then, they figured out how to climb out of it. Like, they've dug themselves out of almost every hole.
So
with
all of this, with all of that, then is it maybe fair to ask, is this just legitimately like they got snake bitten by the injuries this year?
It's fair to ask.
Really, Embiid has played, 20 games?
19, right? 19 or 20.
Whatever it is, 19 or 20. Well, I don't even need to ask. Well, if I told you at the beginning of the year Embiid's playing 20 games, what do you think this team's going to be? Now, you might say, I thought they were going to be better because, they signed Andre Drummond to back him up. Well, guess what? Andre Drummond hasn't played at all. He's been hurt this year.
But then they have Yabusele.
Which he had no expectations for. But on top of the fact that Drummond was supposed to be the guy that was the guy when Embiid doesn't play, now I have a serviceable backup. Well, Paul George hasn't played how many games?
Right. And then you bring in Caleb Martin, who you end up trading, but then you draft McCain. No one thought McCain
And quite frankly, Caleb Martin, he was hurt.
Right. He was hurt a lot. I still don't love that they got rid of him, but I understand the salary and all that aspect. So it's just been, as we're outlining, dude, it's just one thing after another. One step forward, 3 steps back with this team for years.
You got this kid McCain, and you're like, hey, we didn't expect anything from this kid this year. He turns out to be a breath of fresh air, and then he gets hurt.
Right.
I mean, who do you blame for that? How do you blame somebody for that? The Embiid thing, I don't even know how to read this thing because according to reports, and everybody we've had on, that he got cleared and looked at by 12 different doctors that all basically said it's okay to sign him, that he'll be okay.
I don't get it either. I will add this, though, and we've touched on this in the past. Howie Roseman brought in an entire new medical team for the Eagles the year after the Super Bowl when they were dealing with injuries. Can we blame the Sixers medical staff? I think, they need to do something with that. I don't know what it is, but something.
It's fair to ask. You're right. In 2017, they had all those guys hurt, and that was the year of the underdogs, and they had all the backups come in, and they cleaned house.
Right, and since then, the Eagles have been, knock on wood, one of the healthiest teams in the NFL year in and year out.
The problem with the discussion as we're having it right now is fine. Yes, Embiid got hurt. Drummond got hurt. George got hurt. Caleb Martin got hurt. McCain got hurt. That's a lot of guys to get hurt. Fine. But the problem becomes Embiid is always hurt. Paul George has had injury problems. They're both aging players. I don't know where I find any excitement level to feel like those guys I can count on moving forward. McCain, he doesn't have a history of getting injured. He's a young player. Okay, I can count on him to come back and be fun and exciting. I don't know that I can count on the other guys to come back and be the players that they once were.
No, yeah, I think
and they're hogging up all the money.
Exactly. It's just it's a mess, dude. It's an absolute mess. But the Paul George comments were laughable, much like this team and its overall face. All right, let's transition to the Phils for a few minutes. I want to get back to sort of a conversation we had last week, but to rehash it for a minute, I saw that Turner was leading off today, and Schwarber was in the 2-hole. So it went Turner, Schwarber, Harper, Alec Boehm. I like that, right? I know I've had my opinions on I don't want to move Schwarber out of the leadoff, and I maintain that stance, MG. But if we're going to have him not leading off, I like him second. What are your thoughts?
Well, they had this lineup in place on Monday as well. They never played. The game got rained out. I don't not like it. It's not the lineup that I came up with. I'm surprised by it a little bit because the lineup that I had allows you to go left, right, all the way through the lineup so that you never have the two lefties back to back.
Is that a little bit overplayed, though? The left, right?
No,
it's important.
Well, Schwarber and Harper hit lefties. They handle lefties. They're better than, say, Marsh. Marsh can't hit lefties. It's definitely a problem for lefties against lefties. They definitely have more of a problem than right-handers do against right-handed pitching. Righties see more righties growing up. You're just always facing right-handers. And the lefties have a little bit more natural tail. It tails like in on these guys and then away. So the lefties do have, a little bit more problem. Schwarber and Harper don't have as big a problem, but when you're in the playoffs and you get into these nasty bullpens that have these tough lefties that all they do is pump gas and have nasty sliders, That's where having the two lefties back-to-back become a problem. During the regular season, okay, I'm playing the Reds on Tuesday night. They got a lefty pitching. Okay, I crank one off it. But this is where they have their problems in the playoffs. And those two guys hitting back-to-back, that's why I would try to separate those two. And if the problem goes back to they don't have that bat to protect Harper. And that's why my thing was I would hit, now if you're going to hit these guys back-to-back, I would hit Harper in the 2-hole and Schwarber behind him because now Harper has some protection from Schwarber. You're going right back to the same problem of Harper is being protected by Bohm. Not good enough.
Bohm did a pretty good job in that role last year, though, MG. And Schwarber batted .300 against lefties last year, to the other point.
I get that. As I explained, during the regular season, fine. You do it in the playoffs against tougher bullpens. Not as good. Bohm. I like Bohm. Not good enough protection for Harper. Yes, he was fine in the regular season up until he wasn't. The whole month of September. Now, I know he got hurt. There's another problem. He got hurt, and then he stunk. And then in the playoffs, he wasn't anything at all. I want better protection for Harper than Bohm. I like Bohm as much as the next guy. But I would hit, if I'm doing it, I would hit Harper. If you want to do the way that with Harper, I would do Harper 2, Bohm 3, Schwarber 4.
Harper 2, Bohm 3, Schwarber 4. You just said you didn't want Bohm behind Harper, though.
No, but I'm saying if they're willing to do that, that's how I would configure it. So I break my lefties up.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I go Turner 1, Harper 2. So you got right, left, Bohm, right, Schwarber, left, Castellanos, right, Stott, left, JT, right. Now you got left. So someone can't bring a lefty in to face your two lefties.
Yeah. For me, I think there's a value to having Schwarber in the top 3. That's why I love having him. If not lead off, I like having him too. And I am curious to see how Bohm can potentially do in that role if they give him a little bit more of an opportunity again this year. Quickly before we get to break and we can carry.
By the way, I'm not an anti-Bohm guy, so I'm okay
No.
with Bohm, but I can also acknowledge I would like to see. Listen, the problem that they continue to have, okay? They signed Nick Castellanos for $20 million a year. He has not produced at a $20 million a year clip. So when you sign him, when he was with the Reds, he hit 300 with 30 home runs and 100 RBI. You put 300 with 30 home runs and 100 RBI into this lineup, you're feeling pretty darn good about that guy hitting behind Harper. But Nick Castellanos hasn't come close to being that guy. So you have a $20 million guy that you have to hit in the back half of the lineup. So therefore, Bohm by default becomes your 4 guy, and he really should be hitting like 6 or 7.
No, absolutely. Do you think both of those guys are still here after the trade? Just to really project for a second. Alec Bohm and Casty, are they gone? Are they both here? If you had to predict, both gone, both here, one of them gone at the end of the year.
I'm hard-pressed to see anybody wants Castellanos' contract. I mean, unless he comes all scorching hot out of the gates this year, and then I don't know if the Phillies want to move him. But keep in mind, he's signed again for next year. They signed him for 5 years, $100 million. So he got $20 million a year. Bohm, if he's having a good season, I don't see why the Phillies want to move him. He's a cheap guy. So, no, I don't think the Phillies want to move him if he's productive. But if he's not productive, the problem becomes, well, then nobody else wants him. So you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place there. I think they were willing to listen in the offseason, but were asking for way high prices because they value him. I think the guy that they will use in a trade, I've been saying this all offseason, is Ranger Suarez.
And I hate that. I hope you're wrong.
Well, listen, he's a free agent, so he doesn't have a contract. They have Christopher Sanchez. They've got, Wheeler, Nola, Sanchez. They brought in Luzardo and Painter. They got to find a spot for Painter in the rotation. So someone's got to go, and Suarez is a free agent. Can't pay all these guys. You already paid Christopher Sanchez. So what can I get for for Ranger Suarez, I think will be what they're thinking about at the deadline.
Yeah. He's been such a stud, dude, and I hold a lot of weight into what he did for us in the playoffs. But
I agree. I mean, he's had some great runs. Sports Bass Live, 97.3 ESPN. All right, we got another segment coming up on the other side. Stick around. More Rye or Sigh on the way. What is the next thing we will debate? Stick around. More Sports Bash coming up. 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Live video streaming on the X platform, YouTube, at Mike Gill Show. Follow, subscribe, be a part of the show. By the way, Bryce Harper took one in the noggin today. He got hit, had to leave the game. Apparently, he got in his car from Dunedin and drove to Clearwood, about 15-minute drive, and said, I'm out of here. All right, more Sports Bash coming up. 5:32, taking you till 6. Got the Bet365 play of the day coming up. I'm Mike Gill. All right, Ryan Rothstein's back for another segment of Rye or Sigh. We'll see what topic he throws on the table this time around. We did a little Sixers. We did a little Phillies, who I guess Harper got hit today, had to leave the game. I guess it's precautionary. Everything's A-okay. What else we got today?
I want to go national. We're going to go national on everybody right now for a minute. And I saw a report that Tom Brady reached out to Matthew Stafford regarding, potential interest in going over to the Raiders. And I saw this and I'm just sort of shaking my head, MG, because Brady just called the Super Bowl on TV. And I look at this as a massive conflict of interest. I don't believe that he should be allowed to do both, right? Sure, you want to be an owner? Love it. I think that's awesome. Good for the game. Brady's an owner of the Raiders. Good. You can't do both, though, buddy. You can't do both. Do you think that it's okay? Because I look at this and I sort of shake my head and sigh. I don't believe that he should be allowed to be involved in both. Do you?
I know a lot of people have this theory or thought, and I just played devil's advocate to ask the question. What do we think he's gaining by doing the game on Fox?
I don't think he's gaining anything. I don't look at it as like him cheating or him having insider information. I just think it's a conflict. I don't think that he should be allowed to be a media personality, an analyst, and also be an owner of that magnitude, being that involved with the team. It just doesn't sit right.
Listen, I'm surprised that the league has let him do this. But I don't know what he gains from it. He's not allowed to be in any of the production meetings. He's not allowed to do any of that stuff that the analysts generally do the week of the game. Now,
they let him do it for the Super Bowl.
For the Super Bowl, they let him do it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what he had to gain from just doing it from the Super Bowl. There's no more, whatever. At some point, because the Raiders stink. That's been the whole thing as well. They're never going to be in the Super Bowl, so he won't have the conflict of interest of having to call his own game or anything like that. At some point, yes, the rubber's probably going to meet the road where this is going to become a problem, and he's going to have to make a decision. I don't know what he gains by being the owner and being the analyst that is the conflict of interest, other than he owns a team in the league, and here he is commenting on other teams in the league during the course of a game. Now, I don't think he's done a very good job in the analyst role. That's one of the problems. I think that he has not done a good enough job in that role. What do you like him?
I love him, dude. I love him. I think at first he wasn't great, but I think that's expected. For me, I expected him to not be great at the beginning, and even early on, I thought he was better than he could have been. He could have been way worse, and I think he only got a lot better as the season progressed. And by the Super Bowl, I thought he was really good in his role. And listen, reality, there is an added element to him just being simply Tom Brady. It's a better listen right away.
I think that hurts him, is that he's Tom Brady, and I'm expecting more, and I'm getting nothing. I mean, I'm listening to the greatest quarterback of all time, and I'm getting nothing.
You thought he was giving you nothing?
I thought he was awful, to be honest. I had high expectations for him. I thought he was going to be really, really good, and I thought he was really bad. He got to mediocre, and then I think he flatlined. I mean, you're in the Super Bowl, and the score is very lopsided. I got the guy who came back in the biggest game, lopsided score, 28-3. What are you thinking at that moment? What's going on right now? Give me some insight. I got nothing. Zero. It felt like he used a lot of cliches, a lot of just, I mean,
that's a hard game to call at that point. When it's a blowout.
It's a hard game to call. But if there's one guy that I want to hear from, you were down 28-3 in this game. Take us through it. Now, I think Burkhardt was trying to say that to him, and it's like Brady not picking up what he was putting down. I'm like, dude, you got Tom Brady here. Tell me what's going on. Like, it's 28-3. What are you saying as the quarterback of this team? He had so many chances to utilize stuff that he had gone through, I thought, all season long. I don't think he was I say he was awful. He's getting paid
Awful's
$300.
extreme.
He's getting paid $375 million. So for that, I thought he was bad. I mean, you didn't get your ROI. Put it that way.
Well, I mean, I think that's fair, right? You have to give him a big number, but just like we talk about in sports, you can't really factor that into assessing a performance. I mean, it is what it is. If they want to overpay for a guy, they overpaid for the guy, right? I think it's interesting to see what his future is in the broadcast booth, though. And
well, he has said his agent has said he plans on doing the whole contract, 10 years. I don't know. I mean, does the NFL step in? Does somebody complain? Right. Do the other teams in the league like the fact that they have Tom Brady calling these games? I don't know.
Yeah, I can't imagine that they absolutely love it. But all right, we'll move on. Rye or Sigh here.
Definitely a sigh for Tom Brady in the broadcast booth.
Okay, I liked it. But we'll go on to another potential sigh. A sigh for me is we talked about the tush push, but not the tush push. Another evolution of potential NFL rule change, Mike Gill, the kickoff. How many times is the NFL going to change the freaking kickoff? And
get it right.
I'm fine with it, but it's like, dude, shame on you for having to tweak it this many times. For anyone that doesn't know what I'm talking about, they are looking at potentially changing it again, maybe moving it up or back, and then allowing some more movement in the kickoff. Like watching the Super Bowl and watching everyone just stand still in the kickoff, it's a dud, dude. It's an absolute dud.
Well, I think they thought there was going to be more strategy involved. Like if you got it in the landing zone, or if you kick it in the end zone, it goes out to the 30. And I think they thought that, people aren't going to want to give you the ball on the 30-yard line, so that you were going to try to get it short of the end zone to make you have to run it out. And that never happened. These teams were just like, take the ball on the 30. So I guess one of the things they're discussing is moving the ball to the 35 now. Is that what it is?
Yeah, 35. 30 to 35, and then allowing some changes for the receiving team, I guess, as well.
Yeah, so, I think they thought that this was going to be a more strategic play in that, okay, we'll kick it short so that you have to try to run it out, and we don't want to give you the ball at the 30. Now they're saying we're going to move the ball out to the 35. Is that going to entice teams to then say, well, we don't want to give you the ball at the 35? I don't know. Is the 40 a spot that you're saying, I'm not kicking in the end zone if I give you the ball at the 40-yard line?
I think all of this is so stupid that you either have to just say, all right, we're going to go back to how it was, or we're just going to take kickoffs out of the game. Just take them out of the game.
Well, one of the things this year was there was more returns. There was more returns this year than there had been in the past. I just think that they thought there would be even more returns than they actually got.
What do you mean? Just straight up returns? Or
yeah,
returns?
like the play of the guy catching the ball and then running it out of the end zone.
Right.
Or running it from wherever he caught the ball. I think the NFL thought that the teams would kick the ball short of the end zone and that would cause more action.
Yeah, well, they thought wrong, my friend.
Well, and that's why they're talking about moving it to the 35 now, I guess, because they're thinking, well, that deter teams from kicking it into the end zone and just touching back.
Yeah, we'll see, but they need to get this thing right, and they need to stop tinkering with it every offseason, because that's what it feels like right now.
I think what they also need to look into, the AAF, I believe, not the AAF, what is it called? The UFL. I think, don't quote me on this, but I thought I read today that the UFL, instead of the onside kick, they are just now going with that fourth down play. So the onside kick is essentially out of their game, and they're just going to go. It's a fourth down play on your own. Whatever you have to get convert a 4th and 12, something like that.
4th and 8, yeah, something like that. But that's too gimmicky. What are you saying? What are you implying there with that?
Well, I agree. The problem is the way in the NFL, you have to tell the other team that you're trying an onside kick. You can only try so do I. That's what I'm saying. So I got to have a better way that if I'm down, that I can try to recoup the football. If I
just
can't,
allow the onside kick. I remember in the Super Bowl, they were like, well, they're not allowed the onside kick here until the fourth quarter. It's like, how stupid is that?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. It's so I think that fourth down play, I don't know what it is. Is it a 4th and 12 that you have to get or a 4th and 20 that you have to – something like that. You have to convert it, and then you would get the ball. And if you don't convert it, the team, they get the ball wherever they got the stop.
Yeah. That's interesting. I don't think they would ever do something to that extreme, but they need to, at the very least, just allow teams to onside kick it whenever they want.
Yeah, here it is. The league has eliminated the onside kick. The kicking team will be able to retain possession of the ball with a 4th and 12 play from its own 28-yard line.
Okay. I don't hate it.
I like it better than the NFL onside kick, which I have to say, hey, I'm onside kicking.
Yeah. Hey, just to let you know what we're going to do next here, all right, everyone? If that's okay.
And there's no element of surprise. See, I think in this one, I think you can say at any point, if you score a touchdown in the third quarter, and let's say you're down 3 scores, you could essentially say, we want to go for the 4th and 12.
Right. Yeah. I like it. The NFL needs to do something. If they want to get that radical and weird, I'm all for it, man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all for it. I want to squeeze in 1 or 2 quick ones if we can. How about ESPN ending their deal with Major League Baseball after this season? I think that's a huge deal. $550 million. They decided not to do that, and Major League Baseball is going to be looking for a new partner after this season. That's major.
I actually did a podcast about this last night on this same feed if you want to go listen to me talk more about it. But I will say ESPN, Major League Baseball needs ESPN more than ESPN needs Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball essentially said, we're doing Sunday Night Baseball for $550 million. We get the All-Star game, and we get one round of the playoffs. You, Major League Baseball, gave Roku a Sunday afternoon game for $10 million. Why do they get to pay $10 million and we have to pay $550 million? We want to try to renegotiate that deal. Major League Baseball said, screw you, we'll go take our platform someplace else. Well, guess what? Where are you taking it? Who's going to pay $550 or more to take Sunday Night Baseball? I don't see anybody. My prediction is they go back to ESPN and say, can we work this out? Because they still have a 3-year deal left. So I think over the 3 years, they'll just try to keep it on there because what Major League Baseball did, they just basically said, we're pulling everything.
Yeah. So you think they're going to go back with their tail between their legs. Interesting. I think it is a unique opportunity for them, though, to maybe, jump into a bunch of different brands and markets.
Well, they're already on Fox.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Fox has the World Series, the championship games, and they have some baseball games throughout the year. Is Fox going to pay more money to take on Sunday Night Baseball? I doubt it. All right, so I would throw them out. NBC just paid billions to get into the basketball. So they have Sunday Night Football, and now they're going to have Sunday Night Basketball. Where are they going to put Sunday Night football, baseball? I don't see that happening. I throw them out. CBS hasn't had baseball on since like the late 80s. Are they going to jump in and say, hey, we'll take Sunday Night Baseball? Like, I don't see that happening. They already got the NFL. So I don't see that partnership. The streaming services, baseball's already been on Apple. That didn't work. They got rid of it's on Friday nights. Does anybody watch that? No. They have Roku already. They've tried Facebook. They've done Twitter. There's Amazon Prime. They just got into the NBA. They have football. Do they want to do a Sunday Night Baseball game? Baseball just doesn't have the draw that's going to get people to subscribe for your platform.
Yeah. I wonder when these leagues will ever start trying to come up with their own streaming service.
Here's the problem. A lot of them have, like the Dodgers. So baseball wants to try to get Amazon Prime or somebody to buy them and then put them all on Prime. So I can go to Prime and watch Dodgers and The problem is the Dodgers make $800 billion from their TV deal. They're not giving that up.
No, absolutely not.
They're telling baseball, no, we don't want to be a part of your little Amazon Prime thing over there. So
same with Yes Network.
But that's a big problem.
Yeah.
The Yankees have, yes. The Phillies have a pretty decent deal, but nowhere near the Dodgers. But the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Cubs, they all have like their own things. Whereas other teams are like, we got nothing. We don't even have a regional sports network that will carry us anymore. Some of these teams don't even get their games on TV anymore.
Yeah. Do you think that should be split at all across the league?
the TV deal.
Yep.
The national package is, and that's the problem.
Well, yeah.
Now
Regional.
they're losing that. The regional ones, no. I mean, you're in your own market. Why would I have to split it with you?
Just a thought. Just a thought.
No. The big problem was, like for instance, they charged Roku $10 million. They split that through the 30 teams. I mean, come on, really, $300,000? Do you really think that was worth it for you?
No.
So that screwed them. So too bad.
Yeah.
All right.
They lose.
Yep, they're out.
All
All right, there you go. Ryer Sigh, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. We'll do it again tomorrow. Back with more Sports Bash coming up. All right, getting ready to get out of here on this Wednesday night. Here we go. Bet365 play of the day. I think we were a loser last night. We gave you the over. I know that game was really low score, 103-99 Lakers and Mavs last night. I think that was a loser for me.
It was, but Mike, you are still a winner overall because your overall record on the year is now 115, 80, and 1.
115, 80, and 1. So let's get another one in the win column. I got two for you tonight. I got Rockets over the Spurs, and I got Indy over the Raptors tonight. They are my Bet365 plays of the day. Rockets over the Spurs. Pacers over the Raptors. And that is my Bet365 plays of the day for you here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Sixers, I should probably go Knicks tonight, too, by the way. The Knicks are up to 10.5. They were 9.5 a little while ago. They're up to 10.5 tonight. The Pacers are 12.5 against the Raptors. And the Rockets tonight, they are 8.5 over the Spurs. So I'll go Rockets. I'll go Pacers. You want to throw in the Knicks, I got no problem with that. I think the Sixers get torched tonight as well.
Little parlay for your afternoon?
Little three-teamer for you. Our record's impeccable right now. Might as
winner
well.
Chicken dinner.
All right, that'll do it for me. I'll be back again tomorrow on a Thursday edition of the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. We got Sixers and Knicks tonight on 97.3 ESPN. The always entertaining Tom McGinnis on the call right here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh has game night coming up next. What do you got coming up? Anything good?
Got Dave Weinberg and Rob Motti tonight.
Nice. A little twofer for you. Weinberg Wednesday. Motti at the Combine. Take care, everybody. I'll talk to you tomorrow.